All right, no worries. Before we proceed, let's go over some meeting logistics. Kindly address all comments and questions to the chair and refrain from engaging in side conversations or interrupting other speakers during the meeting. Please remember to speak directly into the microphone so that public can hear your statements clearly. I want to remind you that microphones are consistently on. So if you want to turn it off, just push the button. You'll get a little red ring around there. Members of the public are encouraged to participate by offering comments on each item with a limit of 2 minutes per speaker. We also have 2 open forums this evening, one at the beginning and one at the end, where you could speak for 2 minutes on items that are not covered on the agenda, but within the purview of the commission. And for those that are wishing to speak, please speak clearly and audibly so everyone can hear your statement. Little code of conduct, the rules of decorum are to be observed by both commissioners and the member of public when addressing policy matters during these meetings. Its purpose is to foster open and constructive discussions on public policy matters, promoting an environment of fairness, politeness, and respect of different opinions. When participating, please adhere to the following. Focus your comments solely on the item under discussion. Direct your remarks to the entire assembly. Please refrain from attempting to engage in any individual conversations or direct conversations, as they will not be honored. And refrain from using abusive language, which is inappropriate. Failure to comply with the code of conduct will disturb, disrupt, and impede the orderly conduct of the meeting and may result in removal. Okay, moving on. Again, thank you all for being here. And Mindy, I would like to have a roll call, please.
Commissioner Finn,
Present.
Chair Jasinski,
Present.
Commissioner Mowat,
Present.
Commissioner Del Bono,
Here.
and I forgot to mention Commissioner Dawson is not here and Commissioner Khan is not here. Commissioner Navarro, Commissioner Beeler is not here. Vice Chair Partida here. Commissioner Tran is not here. Commissioner Moore, also not here. Commissioner Saperman here. And Commissioner Gabriel. Commissioner Gabriel. Present. Great, thank you. And we have 8, which means we have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Staff, could you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, everyone. Mindy Nguyen with the Housing Department.
I'm Stephanie Gataski. I'm part of Grants Management.
Cupid Alexander, Deputy Director.
Jared Ferguson with Planning, Building, and Code Enforcement.
Jessica Reyes, Housing Department.
Thank you so much for coming this evening. Appreciate it. Okay, we're going to move on to the next item, which is the consent calendar. The item on the agenda is to approve the minutes for the regular meeting on February 13th. Action item, approve those February 13th, 2024 action minutes, but wouldn't it be 2025?
It should be, that's a typo.
Yeah,
Sorry.
so just correction, approve the February 13th, 2025 action minutes. Does anyone wish to speak? Well, I should say, is there a motion on the table? Yes.
Motion to approve the minutes?
Perfect. Do I have a second?
Second.
Does anyone wish to speak on items from the prior calendar? No? Okay, let's vote.
Okay, the motion is to approve the consent calendar. The maker is Commissioner Saperman with a second by Commissioner Finn. Commissioner Finn,
Yes.
Chair Jasinski,
Yes.
Commissioner Mowat,
Yes.
Commissioner Del Bono,
Yes.
Commissioner Navarro,
Yes.
Commissioner Beeler,
Yes.
Commissioner Vice Chair Partida,
Yes.
and Commissioner Saperman,
Yes.
and Commissioner Gabriel.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to reports and information only. I don't have anything to add, so I will turn it over to Cupid if you are speaking on behalf of the director.
I am now. I think Eric was supposed to be there. I didn't have anything prepared, so nothing to update really.
No worries. Thank you very much. And I don't see any council liaison. So we will move on to open forum. So open forum, again, the members of public are granted 2 minutes to speak on any item that's not on the agenda, but within the purview of this commission. As I stated before, direct your remarks to the entire commission and refrain from side conversations and refrain from abusive language, which is inappropriate. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak? No? Anyone on the commission? Commissioner Finn?
I was just wondering if housing could give us an update on what was going on with the RV issue with the rent increase, if anything has come from that?
No, I don't see Emily here. But let me follow up with that about the RV issue. We'll get you an answer. ASAP.
Commissioner Navarro?
Yeah, I was wondering, there's a recent article in San Jose Spotlight where it says San Jose could jail homeless residents for refusing shelter. Can the housing department please provide the commissioner some data in regards to how many beds are available, the number of homeless individuals that are actually refusing shelter? And like that, we get at least an understanding of how severe this issue of homeless residents refusing shelter is. When
Yes,
time
and
permits.
yeah, absolutely. We can provide you that data, and we want to provide a little bit of clarity. A majority of the individuals that we engage with don't necessarily turn down the housing, right? So sometimes they're either unengaged at the time or they're saying that they're needing additional assistance before they come inside. So there was a misinterpretation between what we provided as far as the data and how it was interpreted in the news. We're happy, and we've had to sit down with several council members to explain out, here's the data we have, here's the categories that we've categorized individuals when offered the housing, and happy to provide you that information.
Thank you.
Okay. Seeing no other comments, we will move to, there's no old business, so new business, agenda item A, 2025-2030 Consolidated Plan and Fiscal Year 2025-2026 Annual Action Plan Funding Priorities. Our action item is to hold a public hearing of funding priorities for the 2025-2030 Consolidated Plan and Fiscal Year 2025-2026 Annual Action Plan for the use of federal funds from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development and provide the Housing Department staff with input on the proposed funding priorities for the city's 2025-2030 Consolidated Plan and the next annual action plan. So I will turn this over to Stephanie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So first off, I know that just kind of put it out there that we are not sure what the direction is going to be with the budget with HUD allocations. We know that about a month ago, there was an executive order to sign freezing funding of federal funds, but took 24 hours and that those funds have been unfrozen. We do have access to our federal funding and we've been able to draw down. So as far as we're concerned, it's still business as usual. So that's why we're going forward. All the jurisdictions are putting their plans together. So we'll have a con plan that you'll see in May. That's the 2025-2030 con plan. And the annual action plan, the formal one, will be also heard by this commission. This is the funding priorities that feed into the annual action plan. So we can. So this is just a reminder of the grant, the cycle. We do, in the spring, we do the funding priorities, and then we have the annual action plan that goes into the actual implementation of our program. We do an annual report, which is a CAPER, the evaluation. We do outreach, and then kind of follows all over again. So this is kind of just a reminder of what the cycle is like. So one of the things that I did in looking at the estimated appropriations that would be coming is the appropriations to San Jose have been steadily decreasing. So this is about a 5% decrease is what we had last year. It's just a budget projection, nothing more. I really don't know what we're going to get. So this is just based on my best guess. So in CDBG, about 7.5 million. home 2.5, ESG a little bit under 700,000, and HOPWA is 1.7. So we just recently finished our outreach to the community to kind of establish what our new priorities are going to be in the con plan for 25-26. And these are the new priorities that we're going to be proposing in the con plan that you'll be seeing in May. So the first one is to end homelessness, expand housing access and self-sufficiency resources for individuals and families experiencing or at risk of homelessness, increase affordable housing, ensure fair housing, and also strengthen communities. Pretty similar to what we had in 2020 and 2025. The comments that we got back from the community members really reinforced what we really had already established in the 2020 and 2025 con plan. So there's really not that much of it. So these programs are pretty much what you've seen before. We did the NOFA about 2 years ago. We're going forward with those agreements. So the leadership development engagement training, that's like at Somos, the citywide legal services, that's Project Sentinel, BALA. We also had the landlord fair housing. The meal support is like the Meals on Wheels. This year we did it with POSO and the citywide outreach. So these are some of the new construction projects that we're going to bring forward. There's actually some pretty exciting ones. I don't know why Flat Oak Repair is exciting for me, but it is. This is something that's going to be a regular program that DOT is going to bring forward for CDBG. And these are city-owned sidewalks that they're trying to make safe. They'll break up, clean up. And so they're only asking 150,000. There's a matching fund that they're using. So this will be an ongoing. You saw this program last time, the accessibility pedestrian signal. Those are the signals that are vibrate and the light. So they'll finish it off this year. It was a 2-year program. The Hoffman Viamonte safety improvement, we actually brought this to HCDC, I want to say 3 years ago. Public Works was just getting everything together. They actually have a project together. So we are formally coming in for the funding request, and that's for the Hoffman Viamonte safety. And these two came from Mid-Peninsula. They're affordable housing projects. Arbor Park is looking for fire sprinkler replacements. And in Italian Gardens, we're going to do a full roof replacement and safety lighting. One of the differences that we're going to do for home repairs, we're going to split the cost on CDBG and home. So we had designated in the 2020, 2025 con plan that we would use home money for home development. We're going to kind of mix that. We'll leave that as an open, but we're going to use the bulk of that money for home repair and also for any TBRA, which is the tenant-based rental assistance. So you'll see home money in home repair. This was going to be for CDBG, so we'll have that too. And then the enhanced code enforcement, which we come every year, we'll have 1.2 million. This was a new program that we brought forward last year, super successful. It's a micro enterprise program. So what this is, again, this program is we provide training to small business owners that are childcare providers. We give them, this nonprofit gives them training in bookkeeping and marketing and how to hire staff, how to retain staff, just your basic business, just business tools that sometimes a small business owner doesn't have. We found out that some of our childcare providers did their bookkeeping on a tablet, a written tablet. So it's kind of nice to kind of up their skills, kind of help them grow their business. We don't have money. The city doesn't really have money to provide childcare services. This is a really nice way to really kind of beef up entrepreneurship, but also aid childcare services in the city. We're going to go forward and do 1.5 million in this program. By the way, the micro enterprise program was recently seen on NBC News in the morning and was featured on CNBC. So you know, we were pretty happy about that. In the home, you'll see, for example, the home repair. We are going to put some of that. And as always, we have the CHOTO set aside for the development and fair housing. That remains the same. And ESG should also look familiar. We do the citywide outreach. And HMIS is that database that the county uses that we use to do all the homeless data information for the state. And finally, our HOPWA services, our HOPWA money is for, we aid families living with either HIV and AIDS, and we provide not only 10 rental assistance, but we also do services, so medical, mental health, and those services. So we're just asking as a public hearing for your input, and happy to hear your thoughts.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I will offer the public an opportunity to speak on this item. Anyone from the public want to come up? Please come to the front, introduce yourself, and you have, we'll get a clock up.
Name's Lillian
Oh,
Koenig.
1 second, please. Thank you, Lily.
I sit on, or I've been appointed to the Senior Commission Housing Committee that we just recently elected, myself and two others that sit on the board. And I'm trying to figure out how we can get seniors that are unhoused, which 60% are on the streets. So I kind of took a few notes, but I really wasn't familiar with most of what this is. So maybe some input from staff today would be helpful.
Thank you very much. And not seeing anyone else from the public, we will come to the commission and take comments from there. I will start with Commissioner Navarro.
No question.
Commissioner Partida,
Yes.
our vice chair, sorry.
For the neighborhood, I think it was the neighborhood enhancement. Do you have a list, or do you have a general idea where the the buttons for the pedestrian lights would go?
We had it on last year's report, so I can give that to you in its actual list. Yeah, because these areas have to be qualified as low mod areas, so there's a nice GIS map that we do, and we confirm all that. So to be able to use CDBG money, we have to do that, so I can provide that.
Okay.
But it was in last year's.
Okay, yeah, I remember seeing. a
Yeah,
list.
and
Okay.
it's a pretty long list. Yeah, DOT provided that list to us, so.
Okay.
Okay, Commissioner Moore?
Thank you. Page 11, the enhanced code enforcement, 1.3 million almost. Is that all internal code enforcement, or is it internal and external?
So the code enforcement, you mean for on page 11, the enhanced, it's in the
Yes.
special district, the 1.2 million?
Yes.
Yeah. It's a designated area that, and it's all internal. It's our code enforcements go out to these specialized areas for.
Can you add external to that? Because I've helped clean up a big neighborhood and got them off the gang list, and external is as important as internal, and maybe even more important.
Noted.
So I just want you to know that.
Thank you.
I appreciate on page 7, paragraph 3, saying neutral tenant landlord counseling. However, the rest of it is not neutral. It says fair housing and rental rights. If you're going to make it neutral, you would add rights and responsibilities. Page 13. I noticed that the Law Foundation, it's to reduce discrimination. Do you have any counts on discrimination?
For the, you mean for the fair housing? They get 200 from CDBG and 200 from.
No, what I'm asking is, do you have any metrics on the percent of calls you get that are based on discrimination?
Yeah, they provide that data for us, so we can provide it to you.
So what, you don't know what
I
it
don't
is
have
now?
that, no.
So I would like to know that.
Okay.
And because I have to say, as a rental provider, if I discriminated on any of the counts, I would not rent my units. So I think there might be a more productive use, and I wrote it down. Shoot. Oh, teaching them about credit. Because I think that would actually be really valuable if you taught people about the importance of good credit for renting and how important it is. Sometimes we make choices to spend money on things we don't have to. So that would help people more than a lot of things in here,
That's good.
given my experience.
And I'll share that with Law Foundation Cynthia, the program manager.
Yeah, I think that's really, really important. I think about 60 to 70% of the people who apply don't have credit. And some of them make a lot of money. So, okay, I made the point. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Moed? No? Commissioner Saperman?
I just had a disclosure that some of the organizations that are listed that are going to be authorized funds are organizations that are members of the nonprofit I work for. There's no financial bearing for my organization or for myself, so I don't have a conflict, but I just wanted to provide that disclosure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Beeler?
Yeah, is this time for questions or comment? Or both?
Questions, comments?
Oh, the
Yeah.
whole thing? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'll start with my questions.
Okay.
So I was just wondering, on page 7, you talk about eviction diversion. And I'm wondering, can you define eviction diversion? On page 7? Sorry.
Yeah, I actually received those scope of services from Emily.
Uh-huh.
She manages our eviction team and she. Or can you? speak
Oh,
to it?
okay.
Okay, Kristen can speak to it. I
Thank
know
you.
that I can.
Sure. Hi, Kristen Clements in the Housing Department. Nice to see you all, commissioners. The eviction diversion programs that we operate through our eviction help center staff, we've got about 4 FTE equivalents. There are a couple different ways that we help prevent evictions. One is regular participation in the courts. And actually, we're going to cover this in the next item
Okay.
a little bit more in depth.
Okay.
And then also, we were able to get a $2 million state earmark to provide, augmentation of people's unpaid rent to make sure that they stayed in place. So that's, that's
Yeah.
generally the scope of what we've been working on.
All right, right on. I like that. For the POSSO, you said that there was a language accessible source. Is it multiple languages? Like when you're saying language accessible, it's like all kinds of languages? And they can kind of, how is it accessible?
Yeah,
to
so
them?
originally POSO was services the Portuguese community
Okay,
in East San Jose.
yeah.
This food service used to be, the senior nutrition used to be with the Health Trust.
Mhm.
They stopped direct services last year, so POSO took on the entire.
I
So
remember
they took
that,
on all
yeah.
the language barriers as well. So they
Oh.
have available Spanish, Vietnamese and all, just like the Health Trust.
Oh.
So they've assumed all of that.
Do they
that-
do it with like people though, or like a language on like real people? Oh, okay,
Mhm.
wow, that's really cool.
Yep, they actually have some people on staff.
That's really nice.
They're a mighty powerful little organization. I just.
Well, that's good. I was wondering if, I love the idea and I love the action of the childcare provider business, the
Yeah.
technical training. And I'm wondering if have we thought about any other small businesses that we could expand this idea to, not just that?
Yeah,
particular-
so CDBG is kind of restrictive in a weird way. It has to meet within certain constraints.
Okay.
The childcare does meet within that. So if I can plug it into that definition, then yeah, microenterprise.
Is it because it's like, you can do it as a residential use of your home? Is that why? Is there any other business that's
No, you
doesn't?
can't. No, you can have a regular business as a microenterprise.
Well, I know, but I'm just saying like childcare is actually a residential use of single family or any kind of single family property.
Mhm.
Is there any other business that we know of that works, that is a right of a home? Well, because does that make it still under housing?
Oh. You mean someone who's like maybe has a hobby who wants to sell their merchandise? Is
Oh.
that what you're thinking of?
No, I have no idea. It was more just like posing as a way to just expand that idea to other small business.
I know that this, in particular, this specific nonprofit is what they do is the childcare industry. They do it in other, they also are helping the city of Palo Alto. They're pretty active down in Southern California, but their focus is on small business childcare providers, mainly because most of these businesses are women-owned and low-income in low-income areas. So it's just really beneficial. So that's
Yeah.
that focus.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I get it. I think it's a wonderful program. On page 15, you discuss, it seems like we're funding rental assistance in San Benito County. Am I
Uh-huh.
understanding that?
Yeah. Yeah, so we have always been. So
Okay.
Santa Cruz County does not get, we're the only HOPWA providers in the area.
Okay.
And so we have an agreement with HUD to provide San Benito County with a small stipend. And in this case, it's 300,000, which is about 10 families.
Okay.
Mhm.
Got you.
And it's in
That's very
partnership with
interesting.
Santa Cruz County because they get no HOPWA.
Got you. Huh. What about San Francisco County?
They're too far.
Oh, interesting. San Benito's
they-
closer. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. And then on page 5, you guys, you were saying Housing Department invited qualified organizations to submit proposals. How do you qualify them? What does that mean?
Yeah, so we have a NOFA. We did the last one 2 years ago. We'll extend it one more year. So our next NOFA, which is Notice of Funding Availability,
Yeah.
we'll do in December. We have a packet that we ask our agencies to submit. So these projects need to be CDBG qualified, so we do that. So that's the whole, does it meet the national objective? Does it meet the low mod income? So there's all these check marks that we have to do that become qualified. Once we qualify that, the projects can go forward.
And I
Oh.
would just add very briefly here, related to the NOFA, given the city's current budget fiscal deficits, that NOFA will be considered moving forward as part of the overall budget process.
Got it. So we don't know anything until.
Correct.
Okay. And I think that's probably it. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh,
It's
thank you
great,
very
great report.
Oh,
Good
thank
job.
you.
Thank you. Commissioner Del Bono?
This is a real good report, a real services enriched report. The thing that kind of gets me though are the all the sprinkler systems that we have to replace. And I'm wondering, do these nonprofit housing development corporations bring other money to the table?
They do. They do. We're not the only funding source. So yes, they do.
All right.
We're supplementing what they're doing. But there's no way that we could replace all what we contribute. So
Okay.
we are partnering with Mid-Peninsula and for the fire sprinklers, for the roof, and for the safety light.
Is that it, Commissioner Del Bono?
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's it.
okay, thank you. Commissioner Finn?
Several questions. To start off with, the big elephant in the room, do we expect to get HUD funding from the federal government at this point in time?
There is no clear evidence yet of elimination of funding nor commitment of ongoing funding. As we are apprised of the situation from HUD, we will provide updates to the commission.
Thank you. I'm wondering, a lot of these public service groups, agency partners that do work basically for us, or that we help them fund their work, are we auditing them?
We are. We do annual audits. We
And
do monitor.
is the commission, can we see these audits?
You can.
Are they just available to the public kind of thing, or?
Good. Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
um,
We do both fiscal and programmatic audits.
Great. Yeah. Just a couple of questions about some of the CDBG funded. The sidewalk repair.
Yeah.
How many feet of sidewalk are we expecting to replace or repair with this $150,000?
That's just that's just our contribution, the housing CDBG contribution. DOT is coming up with their portion of it. They're just asking for us to contribute. So they're not just relying on the 150,000. And let me see. I can get the exact amount of where the neighborhoods are for you. I can send that to you.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not a problem.
Percentage is that 150,000 towards DOT's?
Yeah,
Is that-
in talking to DOT, I suggested that it become an annual program, so they haven't done any sidewalk repair since COVID, right? I think, unfortunately. So now they're in a catch-up mode.
Yeah.
And so if they have this constant, if it's on our docket every year, you're not going to have to do catch up. And then they can be on top of the problems right along. And so they agree to that. That's their goal, is to be on top of this. And right now they're just catching up. We're assisting them with catch up, but it'll probably be, you'll see 150,000 requests next year as well. But yeah, I can get their city-owned sidewalks, and so I can get that information to you.
Okay. The pedestrian signal
Mhm.
are. I
This is
imagine
year
that's
2 of that.
It's another partnership. We're just doing a percentage. And are we aware of how many signals might be going in?
Yeah, we provided a huge list last year. I can give that list to you.
Okay.
They're all in the low mod areas that DOT did, and
Yeah, I heard you mentioning that earlier.
yeah, I can
Just-
send that list
I
back
didn't
out to you
hear
guys.
an exact number of how many.
There were like two pages worth, so I can give that list to you. And this
then-
is year 2. They completed some last year, and they will finalize the program.
Great. Then the Hoffman, installing underground conduits and pole boxes and.
Do
new
you
street
remember, because I think you were in the commission when we first brought that forward, we brought some pictures of how unsafe that alley was,
Yes.
that alleyway.
And I remember we allocated funds for this last.
Yeah, and then they weren't, it was just a small amount, and then when they went back to Public Works, they're saying they needed to do the underground conduit, and so they.
That was
it
part of
really-
my question last year was, is that gonna be enough? Cause they're gonna have to
Yeah,
run
exactly,
electricity out there. There's gonna be a lot more to it than
correct.
just putting in lighting.
Yeah, so
this
when
is
they
them
went
coming
in,
Back again this year,
Right.
asking for enough money to finish what they were going to do last year?
correct, and then this will be it, this finishes it.
Okay, great. Um, Enhanced code enforcement. Can you explain to me what enhanced code enforcement is?
It's in a special ed district that's designated by CDBG that we have to propose, and that we offer code enforcement in this. So it's not a citywide. But
Do you mind if I add something?
yes, that'd be great.
Yeah, good question. It's actually a different scope of work. So our regular inspectors, when they go in and they have a checklist of what they check for, HUD says we can't just provide base services, we have to provide extra services. So I don't know those extra items on the checklist, but they're actually going over and above what a normal inspection would be. And it's because they're focusing in these lower income areas that HUD is able to pay for that. So I think it's more around habitability, making sure people have safe places to live.
It just seemed like a lot of money for code enforcement to me when we're only spending less than 500,000 for home repairs. You know,
Well,
and
it's
like,
actually more in home repairs. We're splitting our home repair from not just CDBG, but we're also using home money. So it's CDBG and
Yeah.
home money. So
and
it's well over 2 million in our home repair.
And then Habitat for Humanity.
Habitat
also.
Humanity is.
I see there's several places.
Mhm.
Okay, thank
So
you.
rebuilding together, we'll get about 1.5, and Habitat will get just under 700,000.
Great. On the micro enterprise program, childcare providers,
Mhm.
1.5 million.
Yep.
How many providers are we talking about?
Their goal is about 170,
Oh,
and they have a wait list.
that's a good
It's a
number.
good program.
That-
Yeah, the
that
word is
explains
out.
Why that's so much.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Well, we just recently received a lot of good press. Spotlight had a good article on us. We were on the NBC Morning News.
Mhm.
And there was a little blip on us at CNBC, so we've gotten some good press on our program. And it just, people have heard about it, so.
Yeah, it
we
seems
have
like a
wait
good
list.
program. It just seemed like a lot, but not for the amount of providers that you're covering. At that point, it doesn't seem like enough. So thank you for that.
Oh, no, thank you.
Also, CDBG activities. So we've got fair housing, COA, EBCE, and administration. Are we going to be getting reports back from them also? I imagine that we will,
For fair housing?
for fair housing,
Mm-hmm.
for support services.
We
from
do.
COA.
We come back to HCDC around September and our CAPER, which is our comprehensive annual performance evaluation report. And so we have all our goals that we want to meet, that we did meet, and we kind of give you kind of a recap of how the year went. So yeah, you.
Great.
Mhm.
And I think just one last one that I had, no, I got a couple. I didn't understand on table 7, you break down little reports for the home repair program and for fair housing and admin, but I didn't see anything broken down for the new affordable housing development.
Yeah, the focus this year was not, we have a limited amount of home money, so the focus will not be on home development. We have CHODO for that, which is a set aside for home development. This year, we're going to be focusing on home repair, fair housing, and possibly tenant-based rental. Tenant-based rental assistance, TBRA. We don't have that in home. It's going to be in the home ARP.
And on table 8, I only have some hearsay, but I've heard that sometimes Home First doesn't do all the work that they should be doing, or that some of the food doesn't get out to the people that need it. And like I'm saying, this is hearsay. I don't have any fact or any real knowledge, but from hearsay, I've heard that there have been some shady aspects towards home outreach. And I just want to make sure that we have good oversight on what they're doing and the people that they are serving, and that they are showing metrics of how many people were given food and, you know, their costs and all of that. I just want to make sure that there's good oversight over that.
I can assure you that grants, with the grants management team, partners with our homeless response division. And so we meet regularly, weekly. Both of us do with our agency partners. Home First is one of them. We often talk about those metrics in those meetings, and we also do quarterly reports to kind of analyze those metrics as well. And then we do the annual comprehensive report. And
Yeah, and I think we've heard some of the same things. So both Eric and I have had conversations. They have new leadership over at Home First. I don't know if you're aware of that, Mr. Rene Ramirez. So he was selected as the new leader of Home First. We've also looked at the methodology that they're using for their providers who provide the food, and we're going out with an RFP for new providers. We're actually going to take that function away, hopefully this summer, and we are going to be selecting the service provider across the system. So there's some efficiencies there. One of the ways that Stephanie's team is looking at how they're going to be delivering this is they're going to be doing a few more audits so we can make sure that the money invested is the money used.
Great, thank you so much for that.
we actually have scheduled going forward desk audits, what we call. So we want to ramp that up. So we're creating an in-house monitoring and compliance team. And so that compliance team will be doing exactly what you're saying and much more regular.
And one thing Stephanie didn't mention is that she is retiring. So this is her last meeting.
Oh, wow. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you. You guys have been awesome. I enjoy coming to speak with you guys. So thank you very much. And as a San Jose resident, thank you very much for all your hard work. I appreciate it. Thank
We
you.
appreciate all your hard work.
Oh, thank you very much.
Stephanie.
You guys have always been very kind about my memos. So thank you.
I'm still pinning you down here, though.
That's okay. That's okay. That's why I'm here.
That's why you're here. I had another question about the county homeless management information system.
Sure.
We're giving the county $250,000 almost for their operation of the homeless management information system. How do we use that system, the city of San Jose?
Yes, so that system is the repository for almost all information in regards to the unhoused population. Hi, Gabby. So when our outreach workers go and engage with unhoused residents or unhoused individuals, the repository for where we get that and where we store it is HMIS. So think of that as the massive spreadsheet, massive database that we're required by HUD to have, but it organizes all of our activities and helps us keep track of what we're offering individuals if they choose to engage with us, like give us their name and things like that. So that's how we're tracking them. For this, the city leverages the county infrastructure. So it's about a $24 million system. This is just a small part of it. The city puts in about a third total of all the costs, but receives about 2/3 of the benefit.
Great. I'm glad to hear we're getting a lot for our bang for our buck there. I think I'm almost at the end here of my questions. I think just this one more I have, and that is table 9, rental assistance and supportive housing. How in San Benito County, there's another county that we're giving money to for
Right.
for housing.
Right.
Why? Oh, that's the Hopwa.
That's the HOPWA that I spoke,
Explain.
yeah, that San Jose receives HOPWA funds in our area. And so in partnership with HUD, we provide assistance to our partners in San Bernardino County. They service 10 families.
And family.
Yeah.
And then the other part of that is Bay Area Community Health.
Right.
How many people?
We currently have about 90.
About 90.
Yeah.
Great.
And that used to be, if you remember, last time it was serviced by the health trust. So Bay Area Community Health came in, responded to our recent RFP, and so they are now our provider. They are the HOPWA providers up in Alameda County too. So they're very well aware of HOPWA needs and processes. So they're very, it's been a really good partnership so far.
Great. Thank you for all the work that you've done
Oh, thank you.
and for taking all of my questions. I appreciate your
Thank you.
time.
Thank you very much.
I do want to say though that I received this big packet of information late Monday afternoon, and it is a whole lot to try to slog through before I came here. I'm sure I would have had more questions, and there's more stuff to go still too. Is there any way we can, when we have big packets like this, that we can get some of the information a little sooner? Or are we just going to have to slog through it the way we do?
Yeah, it's just difficult because our posting deadline for HCDC is the Thursday before, and we send out the packets on that day. So I think it's the mail system, but unfortunately, we just can't there's just not enough time for staff to submit any earlier. And so that's why we have to work with that deadline of submitting 1 week before HCDC that Thursday. We send it out that Thursday, and the packet arrives Friday, Saturday, Monday. It sounds like this time. So unfortunately.
Well, you do send it out in an email, so.
And we do that. So after we have the PDF, we do send it out to the commissioners, the PDF link.
Yeah.
That's on Thursday. You should get that on Thursday. So we do that every week or every month.
Unfortunately, I didn't look at it this last Thursday, so I got it on Monday.
Yeah.
I should have looked at it on Thursday, but thank
Please-
you for the work you're doing.
Please know that the con plan is coming, and that's several hundred pages.
Yes,
Okay.
I'll look at
Just
that
a
on,
heads up.
I'll look on that on the Thursday before.
Thank you.
Yes, and the con plan is actually being heard at HCDC in June. I know Stephanie mentioned May, but we will be having a 30-day public comment in May. So we'll be sending that packet over to you all in May, so you have 30 days to review and not the 1 week before the meeting in June. So there'll be more time for that because that document is very large.
Great.
It's the 2025 to 2030 consolidated plan. We're required to submit that to get the funding that Stephanie just spoke about from the federal government.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Gabriel?
On table 9, the rental assistance and supportive housing. Table 9, the
Commissioner Gabriel, can I request that you speak into the microphone a little bit?
sorry about that.
Thank you.
The HOPWA, is that
HOPWA?
just for the persons with housing opportunities for persons with age? or
Yes.
is it additional health conditions?
So HOPWA is a special program in HUD, and it specifically services families and individuals with AIDS or living with HIV. And so we do service families here in San Jose, 90 families, and in San Bernardino County, about 10 families.
Oh,
And we
okay.
provide rental assistance and supportive services.
That was
There is
gonna
some
be-
medical and mental health services that we do provide.
That was going to be my next question, how many? So thank you for reading
Yeah.
my mind. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Tran?
Apologies for showing up late. And also I know that food is no longer provided, but I wish we could get a cake for you for our last meeting here. Actually, I don't have too many questions about the report itself. I'm actually just curious about whether or not the city faces any risks from the attempts to freeze federal grants.
So the city does face risks. However, we don't know what the nature of those risks might be, as I commented earlier. So as we continue to work with our partners and municipal governments throughout the city, we know there is pending litigation regarding the removal of the grant funds, and we will continue to keep the commission apprised as we learn more.
Was that it, Commissioner Tran?
That's all.
Okay, and if you're hungry, there is some pizza over there. I'll go around the room one more time. Commissioner Navarro? Vice Chair Tita?
I just wanted to add with Commissioner Moore was saying about, I don't know how it would look like or where it would fit, but really teaching people about like their finances, like, because I think that's very important. I also see it in healthcare when I used to sign up people for health coverage. And a lot of people don't know needs versus wants, and that affects, you know, their ability to pay rent and other stuff like health coverage. So I think if you can embed it, I don't know, in your HOPE program, I don't know, like that could be, because I know we have some sort of empowerment or something like that.
Well, actually, we have workshops that our legal services providers provide, and on a variety of topics. That might be a really excellent workshop that, you know, Law Foundation or Project Sentinel, our partners, or BALA can kind of provide
I
to
think that would be
our
very
residents. I think that's a great idea. I will definitely share that with them.
Thank you. Oh, and on table 9, when it's just the grammar, on the second sentence below the table, Bay Area Community Health, or you're missing a H there.
Oh, thank you.
And then you're missing living with, you're missing another H.
Got it. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Commissioner Moore?
Just quickly, as the recipient of the enhanced code enforcement, it's so they can do more inspections. It was actually the same inspection as my prior ones, but they added it. So they're doing additional inspections and they targeted the 5 neighborhoods or whatever they listed. And my neighborhood used to be on the list.
Thank you for that input.
Commissioner Moed? Commissioner Saberman? Commissioner Beeler?
The one thing I forgot to mention before is everything that we were talking about in here is kind of to treat a problem that already exists. Is there any attention to the future on how to maybe create the ability for some of these low-income people to own something or build wealth? And I know it kind of goes back to the workshopping, but also just, I don't say anything about lower income families buying homes, you know, and that's how people build wealth in the Bay Area. So I don't know if if that's even a place. Yeah, keep it.
Yeah, I mean, Chodos do that. That's exactly what a CHDO does. So they work with the community on, first of all, building the ability to build the infrastructure. And then they also help families be able to participate in understanding how to become mortgage ready, because it's a long pathway in order to get to home ownership, especially in an area like that. So one of the things is Eric's had plenty of conversations on seed funding Chodos to have the ability to build in homeownership opportunities, and you're seeing us start down that path with that appropriation.
That's great, because I hate when we get mired down in what's happening and not thinking about how to build in the future, because then our low income families, they will always be, they will not find ways to get out of it. And that's ultimately what I'd love to see.
Yeah, then you're going to love Chodos because they kind of empower the community. So as you see us start to develop out townhouses for homeownership opportunities at lower AMI levels, you're also going to see Chodos that have the ability to galvanize the community and help them build power and understanding how to become mortgage ready, how to get that financial planning aspect that we were talking about. Chodos do that. So they start from where you're at and they're saying, how do we get you in a position to have homeownership?
Well, because I think ultimately the real battle that's happening in this country is about wealth. It's about the rich versus the poor nearly. It really is. So the more that we can empower a majority of our society to rise levels, the overall body has more power. So I just love that direction. Thank you.
I'll go back to Commissioner Saperman.
Just wanted to add that one of the community organizations that we're designating funds to, Habitat for Humanity, does a lot for first-time homebuyers.
Yeah, absolutely. So, they have that shared equity model that allows people to have not only home ownership in perpetuity, but to get a percentage of the increase in the value while keeping it available for the next family. And that's sweat equity. So definitely.
Okay, Commissioner Del Bono,
No further comment.
Commissioner Finn.
I'm just wondering, is there any way we can set up a program where we could get people into houses that would be like a rent to buy kind of system? I know a lot of people can afford rent, but they can't really afford to get into a mortgage. And are there any programs set up where we could get people into housing that way?
Yeah, I was going to say that that's actually something that was around in the 1970s. And I've been wondering why it's not a thing anymore for lower income people.
Yeah.
There are some companies that are doing that for higher income folks in the Southeast and the Southwest. But I will say that not through our federal funds per se, but through our preservation work, for instance, funding the Community Land Trust, which I'll cover in a few minutes. Their long-term goal is not to just operate a rental property, it's actually to turn it into a limited equity co-op so that the residents may have a shot at buying for very low prices. So I haven't seen a good model for rent to buy in a long time, but we're very open to that idea.
Well, I'd love to see you work on that, Chris.
Yeah, what might be of interest, and I think Eric has some experience in this, is when you're working with a housing authority, they have vouchers that allow you to purchase a home, right? So it's like you would be having a subsidized voucher to assist in that. I think one of the challenges that we would have in a rent to buy, you've seen so many schemes on that, balloon payments, things like that, that make it very, very, very difficult. And the underwriting and the finance of it is also difficult. So you would want a long-term subsidy that allows individuals not only for some of the repairs that come on, it's kind of the same issues that you have when you try to have co-ops for shared buildings and condos and like that. So we would have to talk about that. That's always in the back of our mind, but you would need some sort of long-time assistance for vulnerable families.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Gabriel.
All right. I don't remember where I read it, but I read somewhere here about additional like shelters type of money. Is that like something that someone would need to like apply for like a, let's say, seasonal shelter?
I don't believe that would fall under CDBG, unfortunately.
Okay.
So
I don't
yeah,
know. I must have read it in another document.
yeah, maybe you did. I think I understand what you're saying, but for with our community development block grant, our home funds and our ESG and our HOPWA funds, all the funds that we're talking about here, I don't think that specifically would qualify.
All right. I'm just, I apologize.
Commissioner Tran? Okay. Great. Seeing that this does not require a vote, we will go to Agenda B. Thank you so much, Stephanie, for everything. Really appreciate it.
We're
Thank
gonna miss
you.
her.
There's a
Very
Giants fan
sad.
game calling my name out. Thank you, guys.
We
Okay,
could
so
use you as
agenda
a
item.
Commissioner. We could always use you as a commissioner.
Oh, that's
Oh,
true. That's scary.
Oh, and come back and ask my former coworkers
There you go.
questions.
Yeah. Pull apart the caper. It'll be fun.
The caper will be there. I'm like,
Caper.
having written one. Can I?
Like
can
that
I see
idea.
Page 23.
Take care, Stephanie.
Bye, Stephanie.
Okay, so agenda item B is the annual progress report on the housing element and housing successor report. The action item is to review the annual progress report on the housing element and housing successor report and make possible recommendations to staff and or the city council. And Kristen, so great to see you.
So great to
Welcome
see you,
back.
Chair and Commissioners. It's so good to be back. Thank you for having us this evening. I'm here with my colleague Jared Ferguson, who is my policy cohort in the planning division in planning, building, and code enforcement. Together, our teams work on the housing element creation and then also on these annual reports. So we wanted to update you. So you have the information. It will be going to City Council shortly. So this is the preview for you. In 2018, the City Council passed a housing crisis work plan. And at that time, there was a bunch of work items that they asked staff to work on. We formed what we called the Housing Catalyst team. A lot of those items were production oriented, but also some protections and also some preservation for housing. In November 2022, this went for several years, right? So 4 years later, we were wrapping up updates on how we had done under that housing crisis work plan and decided to create, as we were developing the housing element, how could we create a unified work plan that would help staff drive the work contained in the housing element. And so we're calling it the Housing Catalyst Team Work Plan. And so we first started that before we even created and was certified in the housing element. Council adopted the housing element in June 2023. We were still working on it to get state acceptance. And along this timeline, you can see that we are continuing to report into the Community and Economic Development Committee on what we thought it should contain and how we would, come back and what would the rhythm be of the report backs. And this is Jared leading this team. This is really his slide, but thanks for letting me do it. In August 2023, we did bring the work plan to this commission and then to council. So y'all were aware of what we were planning to do and the cadence. And then finally, in January 2024, the State Housing and Community Development Department finally certified our housing element. And I will say it took about 4 years plus from start to finish. It was a very big, so we are proud of that. So that's how the Housing Catalyst work plan began. And really what it is just the near-term work contained in the housing element work plan. So we refine it by dates and milestones that we had identified, and then we're prioritizing it based on impact, which we'll talk about in a minute. Next slide. We wanted to show this slide to you. I'm not sure if everyone has seen this yet, but this is kind of a unifying principle slide about all the work that the city is doing and really a lot that the housing department is doing. So this is the housing continuum. On the left, you see a couple of arrows going to the left. This is our work in trying to preserve existing homes and to keep people in their existing homes so that they do not fall into homelessness. As you work to the right, the next 3 arrows, you can see that the city is working on solutions for residents that are experiencing homelessness. But the goal with all the arrows pointing to the right is how can we help move people along this continuum and get them over to the orange area, which are the permanent housing solutions. So, the center is the kind of emergency housing options that we have and we've had to develop, including interim housing for the homeless, but also shelters and, using hotels, motels for or non-congregate shelters as an example. So, and then over to the right, we're now permanent supportive housing units, that's PSH. And then We've got restricted affordable units. We've got rent stabilized units, as you all know. And then we've got, the rest of the market, including homeownership options. So again, our work is trying to move people along the continuum to the extent we can. And then also, this is really a production, preservation, protection. This is a 3 Ps kind of framework. The housing element work is sprinkled all throughout this continuum as to what kinds of units that we are working on and what the things we are doing. Next slide. I'll turn it over to Jared to talk about where we are in housing production this cycle.
Thanks, Kristen. Hi, good evening. So on this next slide, we go into our housing production. So as a part of our annual progress report on the housing element and also tracking our progress on the Housing Catalyst Team Work Plan, we look at housing production progress. So this first slide shows building permits issued in the last calendar year in 2024. And so this is key to tracking our performance in meeting our needs allocation. So the blue bars there are the actual numbers, the permits issued in the last calendar year. And then the orange bars represent the annual average goal over the 8-year planning period of the housing element. So over the 8 years of the housing element from 2023 to 2031, the city has a regional housing needs allocation of 62,200 units. And so the annual share of that is 7,775 in the orange bar there on the right. And so the blue bar there represents our progress last year in meeting that number. Fairly good performance in our low income category. You can see as you get into moderate and above moderate. So above moderate would be our market rate share of production was down significantly last year. We did not really see any major projects in the market rate category start construction last year. We have some finishing up that started in previous years. So going into the next slide, we have our overall progress on that 62,000 that I mentioned. So again, the bar on the right shows the total progress. Again, this is the second year tracking our 8-year progress towards that number. So we have a lot of work to do to sort of try to catch up to those numbers. Some of the work in the work plan we'll go through. We're trying to do as much as we can on the city end to try to address barriers that are within the city to try to meet those numbers. So,
I'm
go
sorry.
ahead.
No, please.
Okay.
Yep.
So getting into our Housing Catalyst work plan specifically that Kristen mentioned. So as a part of that work, as Kristen was saying, the near-term work in our housing element, our housing element, we had 130 programs and policies to try to advance housing production, preservation, and protection. So we kind of have taken the near-term work that we're already working on or that we plan to work on in the next 2 years or so and put that in our Housing Catalyst work plan. And also it could be other work that gets added by council or that staff suggests that will also meet those goals, but maybe wasn't included in our housing element. So as a part of that work plan, we've also developed these metrics and measures to try to help prioritize our work. So the first measure around impact really tries to estimate from staff's, estimation what a particular policy when implemented, what the impact will be. So, a high impact might, result in hundreds of units a year produced. Something lower impact might be, significantly less than that. And then on the effort side, just trying to estimate what's the level of effort required on the staff side to implement that policy. So a high effort may take multiple years and significant staff resources. So trying to weigh those policies, high impact and lower effort, and try to prioritize that work first. So getting into some of our work that we completed last year, 2024 calendar year, both in our housing element and our Housing Catalyst work plan. Those numbers at the end reference those specific programs in our housing element. So the first was around zoning work in our business corridors. There were several neighborhood business districts where we did not allow for housing, and we completed some zoning changes or modifications to allow for mixed use in several of our neighborhood business districts. P24, the next one on the list, we did some additional zoning work around allowing housing in public, quasi-public lands. R6, we completed application of the mobile home park general plan designation for the 56 parks in the city last year. Completed work around our regional home response coordination and planning under H13. And H14, we completed some significant zoning modifications that were required around emergency shelters. And then also we completed item I10, which was creating a seat on the commission for someone with lived experience with homelessness.
For this commission.
Yes, that's right.
Congratulations. We finished that. Exactly. Hi, Gabrielle.
So getting a bit into our ongoing work, as we've gotten into the second year of this housing element cycle, the state has indicated to us that they're going to be paying particular attention to monitoring our programs that they specifically mentioned in their letter to us when they approved our housing element. And so the items listed on this slide are ones that are included in our Housing Catalyst report specifically, and we go into detail in terms of our progress meeting these goals. The state has indicated that there are ones that they'll be particularly monitoring, and generally these do line up with programs that we also agree were significant in terms of completing. The first item, P4, this is around providing additional affordable housing tools for North San Jose. So when we completed our housing element work, we created some new zoning overlays in the North San Jose area to try to encourage more affordable housing production in that area. And we applied them to new parcels that did not previously allow for housing. And so this is really around providing additional tools to try to incentivize and encourage affordable housing in North San Jose. I think at this point, since those overlays were just put in place last January, that we really want to see how those overlays work and then try to assess and apply additional tools in the future, depending upon what we see happen there with those overlays. Item P7 actually completed significant amount of work on this. So this is creating a new approval process for multifamily for infill housing in the city through a ministerial approval. Ministerial approvals do not go to a public hearing and benefit from a CEQA exemption. So for major projects in our growth areas with adopted plans, they can be approved much more quickly. We anticipate at least a 25% reduction in the time to approval, if not a 50% reduction in time through that work. And that was passed by the city council in December and was effective just last month in February. Around P9, we had some goals around affordable housing production in the Diridon Station area, and the upcoming RF from the housing department will prioritize affordable housing in Diridon. Item P35 is another significant item in our housing element. We call it small multifamily housing. This is looking at allowing potentially up to 10 units on sites throughout the city that don't currently allow that type of housing. So our first step in this process that we're underway with right now is assessing economic feasibility of these missing middle type projects. So this could be, several townhomes on a property, could be other types of configurations. So we're including that analysis as part of our upcoming Costa residential development report that we've done in the past. So in the past, that report had focused kind of on more traditional higher density multifamily. And so we're going to be looking at some models around missing middle housing through that and through understanding that economic analysis to try to drive our policy work. So we want to look at what's feasible and then make kind of land use decisions around that. P40 is another significant item that we've been working on. So our urban village planning process is kind of a key aspect of our general plan in terms of unlocking or allowing housing in our commercial areas. And, we've completed a number of those plans throughout the city. We still have a ways to go in terms of completing all of those plans. And so this item was really around kind of evaluating that planning process and looking for some alternative ways of speeding up that process. And we've done some early work in terms of evaluating some different strategies for how we might complete some urban village plans more quickly. P41 is around revising our permit findings to be consistent with objective standards. So we're going to complete that work this year. And then I4 is a work around our housing balance report that should be completed later this spring. And now I will pass it back to Kristen.
Thank you. So you may remember, those of you who've been tracking our city work for a while, that in 2020, the council approved the city's first anti-displacement strategy for residents. And again, we were driving on that work plan and we said, we have to integrate all of this into the housing element work plan, right? And so we're featuring our progress on these key anti-displacement pieces of work because so many people have asked, like, where is that work and are you still continuing it? So this is at council's request. We continue to note this. The first item, N4, and I'll also note those program numbers, P's for production, R's for preservation, and then there's some other ones, N's for neighborhoods, and there are a lot of S's, which means stability for residents. There's also an I section on inclusive communities. But that first item, N4, we have been focusing on trying to help build capacity for community-based nonprofits in San Jose to be able to acquire buildings and preserve residents' apartments, improve them through rehab, and undertake other kind of community development activities. It's kind of like the Community Housing Development Organization, the CHODO, that Cupid was mentioning. From the community benefits agreement that we got from Google, in early payment for their Downtown West project, which was great. It was so early. We were able to, last year, put out the call for proposals and then award 4 capacity building grants for 4 community-based nonprofits, totaling $1 million. It's one-time funding, unfortunately, but those folks are actually, many of them, I think maybe all 4 of them, are also in this other effort that we are supporting on capacity building. The housing department teamed with the mayor's office this time to apply for the San Francisco Foundation's Partnership for the Bay's Future. The award is not money, but it's an embedded policy fellow who's with the city for 2 years. And that policy fellow is going to be working with SV at Home, who is our community partner in the application, and working to support their capacity building cohort. They've got 10 or 12 nonprofits, I think, going through that work to build their knowledge of how to do community development. So it's great. The second bullet on soft story, you may have been following that the council approved a proposed soft story retrofit program and an ordinance partly based on federal rebates that we had qualified for to help defray the cost for some property owners. We also had applied last year for another $25 million in federal dollars to augment the rebate program. And then we've been working on, Eric's been leading, work on trying to develop some more options for loan programs that might go hand in hand with the rebate program or maybe separate, but trying to help those property owners to afford the retrofit costs they're going to incur over the next few years. This is a long-term program. The program was scheduled to be effective starting this spring to start screening properties to see if they were soft story. And that screening period also lasts several years. And that the date of effectiveness may be changing because we're acknowledging that the market has been difficult, that the availability of federal funds may be difficult, that 25 million may or may not come forward. Don't know if Eric has another talking point on this, but we're looking at, making sure that everyone's ready to go forward with this program when it does take effect. Okay. The third bullet is eviction prevention and with a focus on the court. And actually I mentioned this before a little bit. Looking back at 2024, our rent stabilization program staff, they have a little bit of that team that focuses on eviction prevention. The staff participated in weekly sessions at the courthouse. There are workshops for people who are going through eviction court, and they're trying to help educate and try to work with folks to see if there is a way that they could qualify for additional resources that would help them really come to resolution on the amounts that they owe. I think y'all know that about 90% of the people undergoing evictions in San Jose, it's because they can't pay the rent, not for other reasons. So really trying to help them cope with that by the time they get to the courthouse. Ideally, it's earlier in the process you could help them too, which we're also looking at, but we've been going to these courthouse workshops and participating. We also funded 194 households through this $2 million earmark from the state to stay stably housed because we helped them pay their rent arrearages and other emergency assistance that they needed. And then also staff helped over 5,400 households by answering questions on the phone about the city's programs, about resources in the community, about state laws. And also people walk in and we get emails all the time. I get some of them too, even though I don't work in that area. So we've been focusing on court work with that earmark. The next item is on tenant preferences. Mindy is our project manager for our tenant preferences program. You may remember that we were working on a way that people who were applying for restricted affordable housing try to think of another system to use this scarce resource better, right? And so how could we help people who we think are in high displacement areas to try to get a set aside of affordable units so that they may have a better shot at getting a unit rather than just first come, first serve. The program also has an eligibility for people who live in the area of a given affordable housing property. So in March, staff, after a long time developing the program and working with stakeholders and doing data analysis to make sure it comported with fair housing laws, we were successful at getting the city council to approve the program, which took effect immediately. And for the last few months, Mindy and I have been working with developers, affordable housing developers, who are proposing new projects that we are lending money to. And that's, as a lender, we can effectuate this program. And also existing affordable projects as they come back to us so that we could say like, oh, you're already subject to this, but let us help you implement and change your documents so that everybody understands how to do it. So that has been successful. We expect several hundred units, maybe over the next year, to have been set aside for that separate queue. The next item on local enforcement of state tenant protections. Senate Bill 567 was a bill in 2023 that we gave feedback on and we're in support of, because one of the things that it did when it took effect in 2024 was, if you're familiar with the state law that says rents can't spike over basically a net of 10% at any given time, and also statewide put in place a just cause eviction protection for all renters. That was called AB 1482 from 2018. 567 extended that bill, and it also did something great, which is it said that local cities and counties were allowed to enforce the state law because the state does not really have any, staff out there enforcing. Really, the only way to enforce is through somebody bringing suit. So with this clause, we actually, would be seeking resources if we needed to do additional enforcement, but at least our staff can educate the public now about how that state law works and how it works together with our own ordinances, which gets a little bit technical. So one thing that we did to help spread the word was that we contracted with Project Sentinel that does counseling and the neutral tenant landlord mediation through a hotline and the resolution services. They can also interpret and disseminate that information to anybody in the, to tenants and landlords alike, on what that state law said. And then finally, for preservation, I noted before, in 2024, we were successful in completing our underwriting and bringing forward for a city council approval, the first commitment in a long time for a developer that wanted to acquire and then rehab an existing building and turn it all into restricted affordable housing. So it's the South Bay Community Land Trust that came forward with an 18-unit proposal for the Virginia apartments. And so we are able to stabilize 18 low-cost apartments. They're now restricted affordable apartments. They're out from under rent control, or rent stabilization, sorry. And they have long-term intentions to do more things with the property and help residents potentially get into ownership. But today it's a rental property, but we're really happy to get that money out and awarded. Next slide. So you also get your update on former redevelopment dollars that the city used to have before redevelopment was killed by the state legislature in, I believe it's 2011. And so the state, under state law, requires us to show how are we, as a housing successor for that former redevelopment dollars, how are we using that money, and are we complying with the state law provisions on how to use the money? So every year we have to file this report, and you can see it at the end of the council memo packet. This is noting that we've got loan repayments, and we've got land in the form of long-term ground leases to affordable housing properties, totaling $716 million of just this source. And 4 tests that the state requires have been met. One, that you're not hanging on to the money and not spending it. We're passing that test. That you don't spend too much on senior housing, just because it's always been considered an easier type of project to get approved in communities. That we are not spending too much on senior housing in the previous 10 years. We're allowed to spend a little bit on 60 to 80% of area median units. And we usually spend 0. This time we spent 3%. But it's a 5-year test. Every 5 years we check in on that. And then finally, how much of our money are we spending for extremely low income units? And that has to be at least 30%. And we have a council direction to spend 40% of our dollars on ELI units. And this actually showed in this funding source, we hit 40%, actually precisely. Next slide. So this is us coming to you just to update you on accomplishments and where the city stands with regards to its regional housing needs allocation goals and all of our other policy and program work. This is going to council on March 18th. And then at the same time this spring, if you'd like to stay apprised on progress, 3 different ways to do that. The first way is that the housing department is going to be releasing a dashboard shortly this spring that is tracking our production of affordable housing, preservation, and more. And so it's going to be a nice data tool that we have and that we are synchronizing with planning to make sure our numbers are kind of consistent. The third bullet here is that planning has put up on their website a cool Power BI powered spreadsheet that really can give you kind of midterm updates on this policy work that everyone is doing. Our goal is to update it at least mid-year, if not more frequently. And so the dashboard, is it on the Housing Catalyst page of the website now, or are we going to move it?
We're going to move, it's on
We're
the
gonna move it.
PDCE, but we'll move it
Yeah.
to the housing category.
Yeah, we're building that out together. And then finally, I did want to say, Jared, did you want to note your cool new dashboard that's also coming online?
Sure, yeah. We're also working with housing on a dashboard to show our annual progress and have that updated kind of on a monthly basis, and also where you could track the different types of entitlements. You know, there's various new state entitlement pathways, so both for ADUs, for SB9, duplexes, and those sorts of things. So that'll be updated monthly with data. We'll be launching that hopefully in the next week or two.
Yeah, and with a focus on how well are we doing against our regional housing needs allocation goals too. We need lots of housing. And with that, as the chair had noted, the recommendation is you've received this, you've reviewed this report, and we're happy to answer questions or hear any comments that you may want to give. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. Thank you, Jared. I will go to the public for public comment. Please step forward, introduce yourself, and you will have 2 minutes to speak.
My name is Robert Aguirre. I live
One,
on the,
1 second, please. Sorry. Thank you, Robert.
all right. My name is Robert Aguirre. I live on the west side. 10 days ago, I underwent a surgical procedure. And so I was planning on attending this meeting online, which I started doing. And several times, at least twice, you asked for public speaking. I had my hand raised, but I got no recognition. And I thought the only thing I can do is drive down here and be here physically. So that's one. Okay. The other thing I want to say is that on this housing production, the chart that shows how much housing is being built or how many grants or permits are being given out. On this one here, that it shows starting with very low income and it goes all the way up to above moderate. So I don't know if this was an omission intentionally or otherwise, but extremely low income is not on here. Also not on here as a comparison is moderate and luxury housing. Because if you were to see that, you would see the great difference between how much money is being put into extremely low income, which helps the people get off the street, and to show how many apartments and how many condos and housing has been approved and built for luxury and moderate, I mean, excuse me, not moderate, for market rate housing. I think that one of the problems that we're facing here in the city is that people can't afford the rent. And one of the reasons for that is that our housing element has not been met for decades. And if we can't build the housing for people to go in, and the mayor keeps dipping his hands in there and pulling the money out that has been allocated for permanent housing, we will never reach a point where we can actually house people permanently. The idea of temporary housing is just like being on a merry-go-round. Eventually, the ride ends, and where do you go? You're back out in the street again. If you're not building enough
I'm
permanent
sorry.
housing, then I
That's,
can't
that's
have.
your 2 minutes. Thank you.
Through the chair,
And-
do you mind if I make a clarification?
Yeah, why we don't typically comment on public
Yeah.
matters, so no.
It's up to you.
Yeah, but if a commissioner wants to bring that up and ask that question, they're more than welcome to.
Sure.
Okay, I will go back across the room. Commissioner Navarro?
Sure. I have a quick question. So for preservation, from those what's it called, the community benefits agreement with Google on those,
Yeah,
on
the
those
capacity building.
on those
Mhm.
funds.
Yep.
Who controls those funds? I know the city received 5 million. Is that correct?
1 million.
Or 1 million?
1 million for capacity building grants.
Okay.
I actually don't know the total for the community benefits agreement. The city controls the dollars, but it was advised by a committee that was convened, I think kind of during COVID. But I mean, it was advised kind of at an upper tier level by community members as to what uses they thought were important. There was actually quite a bit of feedback before the community benefits agreement money, any of it was allocated to any use. So it was kind of a process that the city went through. And it was a few years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, now that the city received the money from Google, who holds on to the money and decides how to spend it?
So let me comment here.
Oh, please. Mhm.
So the city, through the Office of Economic Development, was the original recipient of the funds. And then that is then distributed out to various projects and initiatives, including, as Kristen had mentioned, through community works and community engagement and building capacity within organizations. There are no new funds to date that the city has received, but the housing department does not control those funds. The housing department does
Okay.
not control the funds.
It's the office of the, okay.
Correct.
And the reason I ask, and then I don't mind sharing this in public comment or in my comment is, I do know that there was $1 million that was allocated to the Gardner Community Center to help that community, which is right there in the Dearborn area. The city has received $1 million, but the way that it was translated back to the community was this $1 million that we received from Google. The way you're going to benefit from this is we're going to pay 2 people to now stay in that community center, which is completely different from, you know, avoiding the gentrification in that community, how that money would be used to help, you know, people in the community, such, you know, maybe a computer room or such forth. So there's a big disappointment, I know, in that community. So, and I know they've been trying to reach to some folks or just, they're trying to figure out what to do with that money. So at least I could tell them, just, you know, reach out to your council member, but also check with this office just to make sure, because obviously there was a disconnect from what the community was expecting and what's been proposed by the city. So
Yeah, and that money is controlled by the Office of Economic Development, but happy to have an offline conversation with you.
awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Commissioner Moore?
Table 1. I know Rena's something beyond. Sorry. Rena's something established beyond what I think you have control over, but how is it defined as far as bedrooms? Like, is each unit 1 bedroom, 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms?
There's no definition of bedrooms.
Okay.
So one unit could be an ADU. It could be a 1-bedroom, a studio, a 4-bedroom
Okay.
house. It could be anything.
Do you have the ability to change that to number of bedrooms? Or is that a state mandate that?
It is.
Okay.
It's a household calculate, number of households in need. And that probably breaks down to different household sizes, but it is a state allocation to the region. And then the region allocates to the jurisdictions in that region. So,
Okay.
yeah.
And then figure 1, I don't know who added this, but I really appreciate you adding what it costs to buy a single family home. And adding that whole aspect, it's page 4. That aspect to the conversation, like Jen, or if I can say Jen brought up earlier. I know I'm supposed to say Commissioner Beeler, sorry. So most households have dual income and have for decades because we can't afford, it's been at least 40 years since we could afford to have single family providers. I mean, some people are lucky enough to, but that's pretty rare. And so this is a little bit misleading because there'll be maybe a salesperson and a firefighter. So to show just, I mean, I
Right.
think it would be good to show that there's usually dual income and it's twice the
Right.
income.
Yeah. So you can imagine those bars stacked on top of each other, or, you know, a big bar on top of a small bar, still well below for these employment categories of what it would take to buy a median priced home. Single family home. Obviously,
Yeah,
townhome condo
but-
more reasonable.
But to rent, it's misleading on the rent side. So the other thing I wanted to point out is table 3. I was doing the math because most housing providers require 2.5 to 3 times income and rent. And these numbers are all off. Like if you even did 3 times, these numbers are just don't work out. So like someone earning, I did math separately, but someone earning $104,000 could afford a $2,800 unit. I'm just saying that the max income is, I think you could fix this. I don't know where you got the source of information, but it's not accurate with standards for San Jose.
If I could comment,
Uh-huh.
the way that we translate income and then rent, it's a formula that the state dictates.
Okay,
And,
sorry.
no, it's a
Uh,
good question, because you're right, the rent multiples are kind of not in here, but it does
Mhm.
affect affordability. The standard for the income generally for most income categories is a 30% of your income payment standard. And so you just take the max income, divide it, take 30% of it for the max.
So,
income.
and the state requires you use 30%?
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
that's been embedded in state law.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um,
It's actually 35 for mod.
Yeah, it's like 33, but okay. I think that was my only comment for this. The housing element, I had so many comments. It's not the housing element. This, what you guys went through is,
The terribly formatted
Well,
state format. Sorry, we couldn't alter it.
no, it's,
Attachment.
but I
yeah.
feel bad because it would take too long to go through all my comments. So I don't know what I do
Mhm.
about this.
Mhm.
Um,
Any general ones you wanted to, I mean,
Let someone else go and then I'll see if I can, I'm trying to pull out the priorities that really help. Is what I'm trying to do.
okay.
Go ahead. Let me come back to me.
Okay, we'll come back. Commissioner Moa?
Yep, I had a couple of questions. I think you may have answered the first one. So when you're talking about residential buildings, we're referring to multi-person, like for example, apartment buildings, condos? Are we talking about homes, ADUs? What qualifies? Is it basically
All of those.
All of
those.
those things are
Okay.
units.
Okay.
yeah.
That's right.
Great. And then the second question is, I mean, I've looked at the stats for 24 and they're relatively low in terms of target. And they look like they're tracking low for this year. What are the main reasons why it's low? Is it still a permitting issue? Is it other issues?
It's a funding issue more than anything else.
Both for affordable and for market rate.
And for market
Market
rate.
rate's very challenged in terms of the economics of multifamily housing.
Okay.
Actually, on that point, do you mind if I point out, if you look at figure 2 on page 9, you can see that there's quite a few housing permits for affordable units. And you can also see that the extremely low income numbers are pulled out here and the very low is next to them. The state actually, their official categories up until recently have just been a very low income allocation, which they know includes extremely low income. They just didn't call it out. The next cycle, they're going to call it out specifically, but we've always pulled it out into ELI and VLI. Anyway, you could see that the red numbers, the red bars, not bad for how hard it is to create affordable housing. Not bad in 2024. And you could see the total market rate, which is market rate class A, how low that is compared to the affordable. And I think what it shows is while interest rates are pretty high, while costs are high, right? Everyone's experiencing these. That's really why there's a slowdown. It's the costs of development. You could see that affordable can be a counter-cyclical strategy to help our local economy benefit from the value created through that construction work and then through new residents too. So it's a nice example of how important affordable can be at certain times in the market too.
Thank you.
Commissioner Sepperman?
Close. It's okay. I have a couple questions and comments. First, I want to disclose that I had the opportunity to meet with Kristen and Jared about a month ago on the progress of the Catalyst work plan. My first question has to do with ADUs. So I track ADU production across the state. What I've seen on the peninsula is a lot of ADUs are being kind of manipulated to meet some of the lower income housing requirements. I thought it was really cool to see that you did a survey checking on how people are using ADUs. Could you just tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so in these first 2 years, we've been using kind of a formula that ABAG worked with HCD to determine on how we allocate our ADU numbers within the RENA. Moving forward in the next years, we're trying to get a sense of how people are using them and what rents are being charged. So last year, in planning and building, we implemented a survey to try to collect data, understand, what rents, property owners might expect to get from that property, and who might be using it. So we got about 66 responses. We're trying to get more. We don't feel like it's enough to kind of have a good enough sample size to really make determinations yet. We're also working at a regional level to try to get better data to understand, because I think, kind of like what I think you're implying, we don't really know how they're being used and what rents they're at. And so we want to kind of understand that better. Surprisingly, the 66 responses was one of the best, most responses that that have been obtained in kind of the area. So we're going to keep trying to improve that over the coming year and work on that. So.
Yeah, and I think it's a good conversation to have about ADUs and what, are they being used for an office? Are they being used for someone's mother-in-law? When we see a rent of $2 a month, that's not an extremely low-income person who otherwise needs a unit. It's probably the kid who just graduated from college, right? So who's a member of the family, big picture. So we're trying to understand how they're being used and how much to count. That said, I think, San Jose is one of the leaders in the state on ADU production because of so many streamlining efforts that Jared's department has made. We have an ADU ally, and now we're working at a regional level too with an ADU resource center. We're considering whether to join that also, like San Mateo County. So a lot of focus on ADUs here. Thanks for that.
Yeah, I think ADUs are great and a part of the housing solution. And I definitely think that San Jose could be a good model for the state. I know there might be some kind of need to better regulate the ADUs with RENA. So definitely would love to hear an update later on how that progress is going. In terms of SB 423 and SB 9, I saw on page 7 the report on how these bills are being used. I will say I know specifically with SB 9, there are some barriers for it being used, particularly the owner occupancy requirements. I just wanted to flag that there's a bill in the legislature right now, SB 677, that's looking to do some updates on both of these things and hopefully can help speed up production for both of those. This is more of a general statement, but also on some of the conversation earlier. We obviously need to be building housing at all income levels to meet our RENA. I just wanted to highlight that we do have an inclusionary fee that taxes market rate housing to either build or pay a fee for affordable housing. The city can't really control what's penciling. And I just want to recognize what you were saying earlier, Kristen, that some of our affordable projects are actually doing really well. And that's just because of the complex funding that they have, and it's different. It's a different funding formula than for market rate housing. But we do need all types of housing to address our housing crisis. I do think HCD will be really sympathetic to the fact that San Jose has been implementing a lot of really good programs in lieu of having the numbers we need. I know some people might see the progress and it's scary, but obviously there's certain things that the city can control and things that the city can't control. And that when it's more economically viable, we'll see a lot more efforts for streamlined housing. In terms of P7, this is a really critical program. Really appreciate your work on passing that. Just following the discussions at Planning Commission at City Council, wondering if there's any more discussions on there being some kind of labor component. I'm not sure if there's been any follow-up on that.
Not at this time.
Okay. And then for P35, this is another really huge program. I just wanted to recognize that there's a bill in the legislature right now, AB 647, that streamlines to build up to 8 residential units on a single family zone. And I just wanted to recognize that the city's local program goes above and beyond that. And this law isn't even passed yet, so just thought that was really great work. And then I also wanted to flag that there is another bill in the legislature, SB 336, that targets this like missing middle, because this is kind of a huge problem in terms of production all throughout the state. This is a welfare tax exemption. Right now, there's a tax exemption for affordable housing, but this would include rental housing. This would include moderate income units up to 120% AMI. Obviously, our missing middle is really important, especially to essential workers and like teachers, healthcare professionals. So just really appreciate the work the city is doing on that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Beeler.
I just want to thank the department or whoever's idea it was. I think it's really great to reevaluate planning, figuring out where we can put more housing, where it would be appropriate, where it would fit. And I wondered if P4, is that where, is that Gishan First, where there's all the old, like, kind of dumpy hotels that they were gonna convert, where the Denny's is?
Yeah, actually, right near First and Gish, there's an affordable property right there.
Yes.
And then, yeah, there's some motels just south there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they're gonna
one is
redevelop
going
that,
to
right?
be, converted, I believe, to permanent units eventually.
Yeah.
We've been teaming, I think it's, Eric, is that with the Housing Authority?
That's
on that
correct.
site? Yeah.
When you guys are identifying properties that can be converted, has it been considered to do open office space that's just been sitting and reconverting that into some kind of housing
Yes.
livable?
There's several proposals downtown right now that are
Okay.
being evaluated. Like the Bank of Italy building here.
Okay.
It's been a challenge, it
Mhm.
really depends on building configuration and then what the expense is to do that.
Yes.
So it's something that, we've been supportive of downtown.
Okay.
But we haven't had one yet that's, some that have started, but none that have quite
That makes
unlocked
sense.
it yet. Yeah.
Well, I'm
but we
just
might have
wondering
more
if there's
soon.
like a developer that's got something sitting that's just like they're dying, you know what I mean? To where, I don't know, it's just unfortunate that we have all this office space sitting empty and we have people sitting on the streets. It seems
And Ally's gonna say,
counterproductive.
Ally's
Seems-
gonna say there's a bill for that too this session, which there is.
Good, because it
Yeah.
seems like, I mean, I understand that it takes money and resources to convert those places, but to build something from scratch has to cost more. So maybe, maybe not. I guess that's the point, right?
Yeah.
Depends, yeah.
Yeah.
Strangely, it depends.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
gosh, how complicated.
I know.
I don't envy your jobs. Okay, so I also wanted to, I guess it's a bill that was passed, but what a great idea to streamline the process to develop. I mean, bureaucracy needs to get out of the way, for heaven's sakes. If that can be on the record, let city council hear that. And then I was curious on table 7, why is it that the ADU units by affordability are the exact same numbers? Is that right?
So that's that methodology that I was referring to.
Okay.
So right now, since there's kind of a regional approach that the state's approved for us to use in how we count ADUs. So 1/3 goes into each of those categories.
Okay.
So moving forward, we are looking for kind of as I was talking about, looking at survey data to come up with a more permanent, kind of allocation or at least
Okay.
approach on how we allocate. But that's why that's that way, is we're using an approved kind of methodology for how we allocate those.
Okay, that
A-
makes
And that
sense.
was based on on a survey also.
Yeah.
But yeah, as Jared said, we need to get more data ongoing and then see how we're comfortable counting them. And I do want to say that generally you can't count a unit for RENA at ELI, VLI, LI unless there's a recorded restriction on it. And so this ADU rule is the only way that we've been able to say, well, even if you only are charging your mother-in-law $100 a month, that is housing someone for a
Yeah.
low amount. So, we'll see what the next formula looks like,
Yeah,
or
it
if
would
the
be
rule's
in-
different.
It would be interesting to see how, are people keeping this in their families and, or are they
Yeah.
renting them out? Are
Yeah.
they?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, anyways, this was very detailed and I'm both impressed by all this work and also a little terrified for the city. So it's kind of like a doomsday situation, especially what's potentially going on federally. I was like, ugh. But thank you for all you do.
Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner Del Bono.
Excellent report. No comment.
Commissioner Finn.
How is AB 393 going to affect our, what we're doing? Because it it says it creates two new income categories, one of which we're already using, but the acutely low income we don't use. Are we going to start using the acutely low income?
We are, Jared. do you
That's
wanna-
the purpose of that bill. We actually did have some concerns with it when it came through because it is a completely new income category that we don't currently produce or track. And so we're kind of a little bit, anticipating what that's going to be. I think the bill also requires HCD to come out with some guidance at some point. But until then, I think we kind of do have also some questions in terms of how that's going to be, both from a planning perspective, like where, because we have to plan for low income units. How will we plan for these acutely low income units? How are they different from, other extremely low income units that we look for? So I think we're still kind of, have a lot of questions about how that's going to work in the next housing cycle. Yeah.
You flagged a good wondering of ourselves. The other thing that we are wondering is the acutely low income housing. Would that include interim housing? Would we get credit for that work that we're working so hard at and spending a lot of money on? Because that is often, if somebody's making, only on Social Security, making 12% of area median, you can't really afford a permanent apartment. And so either we have to have tons of rental vouchers in the market from the federal government, which is unlikely, to get more, or some other credit needs to be given. So that's something that we're really thinking about too.
And then I was just wondering also, I don't seem to be able to find the chart that the gentleman that spoke publicly was showing us. Was there a reason why that was set up differently than these other charts and didn't show the extremely low income or the market? I don't have the chart to
Yeah,
compare
so
it to, but
the slides have
Yeah.
that, and those are the income levels we report on specifically to the state. And then in the report, as Kristen was saying, we do break it out more.
break it
So
out
that's,
further.
yeah, we like to show it, but then we're also just trying to show our progress that's reported to the state. So they don't separate that last category.
It's just in the state format. But
Okay.
you could see in the memo that we do break it out for ourselves because
Yeah.
we need to build DLI housing.
Yeah,
So
I see that in the other ones, but
Yeah.
I didn't know why it wasn't in that, but you've explained it. That's the state, what they want. Okay, thank you. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Gabriel. Commissioner Gabriel. No comments?
No. I was gonna just talk to the issue of the interim housing and permanent housing.
Could you please speak back into the microphone? Thank you.
Yeah, I was gonna talk to the issue of interim versus permanent, simply because it's such a hot topic. And if we, okay, this is just my idea, very simple Fourth education idea. If we were to take yearly residents in the interim housing for the last few years and see what happened to those people that stayed there, how many actually went into permanent housing? How many went back in the street? And how much good did it do the person? That's like kind of the ideas, because I've been keeping my eyes open ever since the first one opened. And I have the numbers, I just have to put them in a table.
Okay, so the department hasn't historically collected good data on this. And as we've made improvements to the management of the interim housing sites and then collecting that data regarding performance and transference of residents to permanent housing, what we've seen over the last few months is that it's roughly 30% transfers to permanent housing because there is potentially a lack of units. There's also a disconnect between the city system and the county system. They're also realigning to improve that number. In terms of exits out of interim housing and the returning to homelessness, that again, the data is not clear on that because we weren't collecting that in a clear way. So we've made improvements to the HMIS system to better capture that data moving forward. And then the department is going to be releasing a dashboard on our management of the interim housing sites, as well as the performance of transference and moving on across residents by the end of this month.
Thank you. And my next question is, how come San Jose doesn't have a HUD liaison currently?
A HUD liaison?
Mhm.
We have, but you mean like we have a HUD contact. Yes.
Had you heard that earlier in the report from Stephanie?
I heard so much, I don't remember.
Oh, yeah. We do have liaisons, yeah, with, for our federal funding, in the San Francisco office of HUD. The downsizing for the agency that is being currently ordered, we're not clear what that agency is going to look like, what that office will look like shortly, but we are tracking that very closely.
Oh, I was just hoping that we can have one locally since San Jose is so huge.
That's a HUD determination based on their regional offices, so we can't control that.
Thank you so much.
Commissioner Tran?
Sure. Oh, actually, I have some other questions, but Eric, you mentioned something about not tracking data on, I guess, what happens when people come in out interim housing. If that data is not currently being tracked, I do remember one data point that was tracked a while back, and I think it was like for how many people we could pull off the streets, how many more were coming on. Is that data still being tracked, or is that analysis still being done?
Yeah, so we're now tracking the interim housing data. So to make sure clear, we're now doing that, and we've installed a clear system with our partners to capture that data, as well as a data analysis system for that. So that's now in place, and we'll have performance about this in the coming months. Then to the question regarding inflow into homelessness, the department doesn't capture this independently. That is done by the county in partnership with other organizations. And then we receive that analysis and factor that number into our overall analysis about how do we identify how many individuals are unsheltered homeless.
Okay. So for the data that we're beginning to collect, when is the soonest that we're going to be able to see that data, and what time period would that cover?
So we started implementing a clear capture system of the data in August of last year. The dashboard that we'll be producing and making public at the end of this month will show that first effectively 6-month period of what is the performance of the interim housing. And then as that dashboard evolves, as we get to a 12-month period on transferences, the permanent housing into other forms of shelter, other programs that we provide under our both outreach programs as well as interim housing management, we add into that dashboard so that way it's updated on a monthly basis and be provided to the public.
Okay. I mean, it's great that we're capturing this data. Where I guess I'm a little, I'm not sure what to do, is that there's been years of efforts to address homelessness, and we now have a whole other point of comparison for it. And it's kind of, and I would love to be able to at some point see prior efforts and compare the success or lack thereof with what we're doing now. In particular, I think it's like important for us to be able to identify, like with this kind of big focus, new focus, where we are just trying to put as much money as we can into interim housing. I would like to, it'd be good to see what's the success rate there as compared to a time when I believe we actually had a more balanced approach, where we actually tried to sustain our interim housing and maybe expand what we could, but also invested in permanent supportive housing, especially now with Mayor's proposal that all Measure E funds to be devoted just to interim housing, and not have any of that actually be allocated towards permanent supportive development of permanent supportive housing either. For the report itself, one thing I wanted to understand here, because I saw very interesting data between tables 4 and 5, and this is just for my knowledge and understanding. When we talk about, excuse me, I think I'm comparing different tables here, but when we're talking about residential applications and permits that were approved versus those permits that were issued, kind of get clearer understanding of what that difference is.
So planning approved permits mean they have an entitlement. So they have a permit from planning that says you're okay to build this building. And then building permits issued are where they come into our building department and get the permit issued to actually start construction. So there's 2 steps usually in the permitting building process.
So the approval step would then precede the issuance step.
Correct. Right.
Yeah, table 4 is about site entitlements when planning, that's the planning approval.
Oh, sorry, I was comparing 5 and 6. I think that's.
Yeah.
maybe you're
Yeah,
asking
no,
about.
I
Saying
highlighted
five
the-
is
yeah,
actually, yeah.
That was on me. I highlighted the wrong
I
tables.
think-
Yeah, so we
It's a- it's a
kind of
good point.
track both stages, right? Approval, and then to start of construction is generally, we count that as building permit.
Right, which is table 6. But table 5 is a different way to look at it, which is, how much of what we are approving for site entitlements is affordable versus market rate.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And that was on me because I highlighted the wrong tables on my notes. So in terms of just like if we're forecasting out here, I mean, what really stands out to me is the difference of what was issued in terms of affordable units versus what has been approved. With looking at the same comparison, right? Is there an explanation for why there's kind of such a huge difference between the permits that are issued, where 92% of those permits qualify as affordable, whereas the permits that were approved, it's a good 2-to-1 in favor of market rate?
Yeah, I mean, it's really a result of the current economic conditions. You see those approvals for market rate. In order for them to move to construction, they've got to make economic sense. And right now, the market's really challenging for those. And affordable, kind of have different calculus with the kind of the funding available to them, and they're able to move at a different pace because of that.
Okay. So is this, do these two tables then reflect that there's a stronger investment in affordable housing, or is it just simply that affordable permitting hasn't changed, it's just market rate has dropped dramatically?
I mean, I think right now, affordable has been strong. I think it's continued to be strong, with the different approval avenues that are available to it through state streamlining. But market rate has continued to be challenged significantly because of all the economic factors. The cost of construction continues to increase. And then you layer on top of that interest rates where they are and the other factors in the market. It's been very hard. I think, like I mentioned, we haven't really seen any major project break ground in this last year for market rate. And even the 2 previous years, only one major project in those each 2 previous calendar years started. So it's going to be really challenging for market rate. In our last cycle, in the 5th cycle of the housing element, we did meet that above market category. So the market rate category, we did meet the numbers for arena goals. But so far the performance has been, very poor for market rate housing.
Is it fair though, that this, because based on what you're telling me, is it fair to conclude that we're kind of seeing 2 things happen? One is that there's a lot of challenges and headwinds for market rate production, but we're actually seeing more success on the affordable side of it?
We're seeing success. We could be better.
I mean, could be better is always the case.
Yeah.
To a degree. It's a complicated question. I'll just add to what Jared was saying. The financing challenges within the market rate are similar in the affordable rate. The affordable rate is able to produce more because the gap financing pushes it over the edge in order to make them pencil. So those same headwinds exist for both types of products. And so although the affordable is able to move forward, a lot of that, particularly when the city, has been funded through the county's Measure A program, and that has been incredibly successful. And then also sales of homeowners, 2 million and above, and Measure E having peak years in the last couple of years has then allowed for more project financing in the affordable. But I don't want you to take away that the challenges aren't the same. The challenges are the same. They're just financed differently. So it becomes an impression that affordable is leading ahead. It has the same challenges. It's just as you're seeing cost per unit and the city's subsidy per unit has skyrocketed. And that's where the continuing headwinds will now be on the affordable side, because now units are $900,000. City subsidies will start getting close to $300,000 or more.
I just want to add to one of the reasons we're kind of interested in that small multifamily housing is to try to see if there are ways, that's a lower construction costs there. We continue to see ADUs, even though they're expensive, the market's still been able to produce those. Or are those other ways we can kind of leverage that market type and produce more housing units? So that's why we're really interested in that. We want to understand the economics of that in the current environment to see if that's another route where we could try to increase our market rate production.
If I could add one more thing, the inclusionary housing ordinance that we have, which has 10 different ways you can comply, as Commissioner Safferman had mentioned. we recently brought to the city council an incentive program, a multifamily housing incentive program that makes it a little easier to get through the inclusionary program, to do some units, but then lower an in lieu fee that would go together with the units down. So we're still getting something, but we are also giving up something to try to help feasibility and get the market rate units over the edge. I'll also say, to Eric's point, so much of this is about financing, because we have been seeing quite a bit of, activity in the inclusionary program, which, by the way, is a for sale. We're seeing for sale properties going forward. This is, to me, right now, the only thing we can do in the for sale space, really, which is developers are bringing in for sale properties, and apparently they are close to breaking ground. And then some of their questions are, can we do for sale ADUs? And in response to a recent state law, the city also passed an ordinance that allowed a small number of for sale ADUs to be created after they're built, that you could parcelize and sell. And so it's an interesting conversation about different housing types, and for sale, apparently the financing's a little bit different and the risk profile different than multifamily. So we're seeing an increased popularity on the for sale side, which hasn't been around for several years, actually. It's pretty interesting to see who's coming to us and seeming urgent about getting through our process.
I mean, the ADU experience is definitely interesting to monitor. I don't know of anyone, I don't necessarily see that as a long-term solution. I mean, definitely a piece of it, right? But it's one unit that's very small. And when we're talking about cutting parcel lots even smaller to allow for the sales, it limits what actually can be done on that lot then anyway, right? But it does add to the pool. Part of my interest in kind of the data that from this report is that it's actually suggesting that at least the regulatory framework is doing what it's supposed to do. It's kind of insulating the affordable unit developments from kind of the headwinds that are coming in towards housing development. And one data point that in particular stood out to me in the first paragraph here, and I'll just read it out, but it's on page 7 under summary of residential applications and approvals in 2024. The first paragraph was actually, this stood out to me, but one thing stood out. Compared to 2023, there were an approximately 2,000 additional units that were submitted. A majority of these additional units were submitted through the state builder's remedy law. So I have a few questions about that, because we're focused in on San Jose, right? The application of the builder's law suggests to me, though, that we're not doing enough to ensure that these projects move forward, which is why it's being applied the way it is, and it's showing success in that way. Are there challenges that we're dealing with right now where the builder's remedy is being applied so heavily? We're like 2,000 different units here?
Well, first I would say, I mean, those builders' remedies are still somewhat speculative at this point. They're entitlements, so we don't know if they're going to proceed to construction.
Okay.
Some of the sites where they're being proposed, are a little challenging. Some are proposing lower densities than typically we would look to see on properties that we would allow for multifamily, on large properties that we would allow for multifamily. So I mean, we can certainly, as we get through that process, take a look and see if there are changes warranted, but it's sort of complicated, I think, to draw too many conclusions on how those are being applied and asked for.
Okay, I mean, that's an interesting data point for me. I mean, because it does for the two things it kind of points out, right? One being builder's remedy only applies if we're not doing enough to move these applications forward, right? But also, does the builder's remedy actually result in the construction of units? I mean, that's the other data point that I'm actually interested in, to see it from beginning to end and see, how it actually works in the process.
Yeah. And if I could just comment, the builder's remedy was only applied for a given number of projects because we were late in getting our housing element certified. It was just a window for a period of time. It was nothing that we had done in violating kind of the Housing Accountability Act or anything like that. It was just, we were late by a few months because it was a hard process to get. The other thing, unfortunately, that a new law from last year, Buffy Wicks did in 1893, The builder's remedy, it clarified many things about the builder's remedy. One of the things it did is let those deals actually waive affordability requirements, or a large extent of them, if they say magic words. And so, and really the city can't do much about it. So those deals would continue to have a little advantage over other deals, sadly. But, you know, that's the state law. Like, we're following the state law, so.
Right. Yeah, I remember that kind of similar situation as when, and I'm forgetting the Supreme, there was a court case that actually removed a bunch of restrictions on building housing in North San Jose. And then within that
Yes, the
small amount of
Palmer
time, there were
case.
like 8,000 units built, I believe.
Yes,
Right.
and that is exactly why we saw in the strategies, why do we want more affordability in North San Jose? Exactly. There was a ruling in LA called the Palmer case that said that inclusionary housing was violating the state law that says when a tenant moves out, vacancy decontrol, that the rents can come up to market. And it was really two different bodies of law, sorry, that this judge was conflating, and then that was overturned by the legislature. The legislature never intended those two bodies, those two areas of law, rent stabilization and affordable housing, to be conflated. So anyway, that is why all North San Jose built out with rental units, all of them market rate, because it happened in a given window of time.
Right. And
So
so
that's why we were targeting that area, for trying to get some more affordability in there, because there's not very much outside of Rincon South.
No,
So,
well, I mean, from a data perspective, though, I think this also presents an opportunity to really see builder's remedy play out in like this kind of a vacuum where, you know, like because of the delay in the approval of the housing element, you can kind of see the builder's remedy get thrown in really quickly and then see where it goes from there. Although I recognize it's early in the process, we don't know if it's going to actually go through, and they may not actually go through anyway if there are other economic conditions that just prevent them from getting through. But that part was just really stood out for me. The detail in this report, though, was great. Those were really my main questions. Separate from this, though, because I know Measure E is mentioned in this, can staff actually just kind of present a really quick, like 2-3 minute overview of budget process from here through May and how Measure E gets factors into all of that?
Sure. So the mayor released his budget message yesterday at noon. On March 18th, which is next Tuesday, that's when City Council will take a vote on that message. Then there'll be a series of public hearings on various components of the message and the overall budget. As well as in April, I think we have planned to come back regarding Measure E to the committee. And we'll lead that discussion for this committee to provide advice to the City Council regarding the use of Measure E in light of its potential uses, what is called for the mayor's budget, and what City Council will be deciding related to the budget message on Tuesday, the 18th. So it'll progress through over the next couple of months, and that's the quick summary of the budget process.
I think that was exactly what I was asking for. Appreciate it. In that case, and I don't know if it's proper, but we know Measure E is going to be a big topic of discussion. I wonder if it would make sense for the commission just to create an ad hoc committee or work group to review the budget message, to track what's happening, and to come back and present a recommendation to the commission on what we learned about Measure E and what we hope to come out of it.
You can always make a motion for that.
I'd like to move that we create an ad hoc work group to focus on and study the mayor's proposal for Measure E and to come back to the commission with a recommendation.
Second.
Okay, second, Navarro. Clarifying question, are you trying to form the ad hoc committee now so you would have your report ready in April?
I think that would be necessary if this council is going to pass the final budget in May.
Yeah, okay, just wanted to clarify on that.
So let's just clarify, this council doesn't pass the budget until June.
Oh, thank you.
So just as a point of order there, and two, I would like to understand what is being requested further in terms of study and assessment you're trying to get to on Measure E.
Well, what the commission has done before was create work groups where a few commissioners who are available put in the extra effort to understand any particular proposal and then come back and bring a recommendation to the rest of the commission, something to help guide our discussions so that it's kind of not a free-for-all. I'm hoping that, knowing that Measure E is going to draw a lot of attention, I'm thinking that this can be a more efficient way to go at it.
Okay. And then Chair, I will lead that work with the subcommittee. So if the committee so votes on it, then I will engage in that directly.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, we have a second. So Mindy, let's take a vote on.
And Chair, I'm sorry, before you take a vote, if you did want the ad hoc committee to start right away, you would also ask for volunteers here and name them to the subcommittee today.
Okay, so you do that.
You could do it at the
That's-
next meeting as well, if
Yeah,
you
okay.
found that timely.
Can you put up the
But,
right?
maybe they'll help clarify them before we all vote. Since the council votes on the budget in June,
June.
and we're expecting probably more information to come out in April. Does
Correct.
it make more sense for us to actually?
My recommendation would be to delay it till after at least next week's meeting, the next couple of weeks. That way there's more information to actually debate. And so then you don't need to take a vote at this time on members of the committee. You could take that at the April meeting, since we have more time for more assessment, and then we can engage in a few structured meetings at that time.
Okay. Appreciate that.
Are you
Yeah,
okay with
just
that,
the vote to
Commissioner
create
Tran?
it, but we don't have to fill it up yet.
Okay, so just vote to create it, but not put people on it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's get people on it. And because otherwise we vote to create something and maybe nobody wants to join, right? So let's try to get people to be on this if they wish and desire. So Mindy, can you put that in writing so we can all see what the statement is and put it up for us?
Yeah, and I also want to note that Measure E spending report will be coming to the commission in April, because I think that would, add more discussion to creating this ad hoc. But so are we taking a vote on the, what are we? I'm sorry.
Yeah, so we need to get the language for it and then we could take a vote. Well, we got to figure out who wants to be on it and then we could take a vote. And an ad hoc committee can stay open for how many months? It's
6 months
6
from the
months.
date of creation.
Perfect. So then not a problem. We create it today and be good.
Point of order.
Yes.
I thought we could only make motions on things that were on the agenda. Is this Measure E on the agenda?
It was within the report.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so I have, the motion is to create an ad hoc to study and assess Measure E and report back to the commission with recommendations in May. Is you more specific?
I believe, yeah, in May.
Okay. We're not
Okay.
selecting members yet.
We are. So, who would like to join the ad hoc committee?
It also can't be everyone.
Exactly. There are limits on it.
Yes.
No, I know, but there's actually a limit. You cannot create quorum, so we got to just do our count. So hands up again real quick. 2, 3, 6, 7. Yeah, you're not quorum, so
I have,
please keep the hands up so Mindy can take that report.
Tran, Finn, Sapperman, Moad, Navarro.
Quorum.
Well,
As long
that's,
as
You
it-
would violate the Brown Act. I think we have 7, right?
Create an ad hoc committee. Committee, yeah.
Does that all look correct to everybody? Yep.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, so the motion is to create an ad hoc committee to study and assess Measure E and report back to the commission with recommendations in May to include Commissioners Tran, Gabriel, Finn, Saberman, Moad, and Navarro. Let's call to vote.
Commissioner Finn,
Yes.
Chair Jazinski,
No.
Commissioner Mawad,
yes.
Commissioner Del Bono,
Yes.
Commissioner Navarro,
Yes.
Commissioner Beeler,
No.
Vice Chair Partita,
Yes.
Commissioner Tran,
Yes.
Commissioner Moore,
Yes.
Commissioner Saperman.
Just a point of order. I want to make sure that there's not a conflict for me to be a part of this committee. am planning on having conversations with the mayor's office. They've reached out and asked for me to discuss this with them.
So I would leave that to the chair. My recommendation is that you do not participate.
In the committee or in a
In
conversation
the
with?
committee, in the committee, you pick one or the other.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do you want to be removed from the ad hoc?
I can have someone else on my staff talk to the mayor's office.
Okay. Okay.
So I'll
Yeah,
still
if that's what you desire, then appreciate you bringing that to our attention.
Yes.
And Commissioner Saberman?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Commissioner Gabriel?
Yes.
And the motion passes.
Okay. Commissioner Tran, was that it for your comments on this agenda?
That's it. Thank you.
Okay, great.
As once that, now we will discuss at some point sort of the process for that I will lead with the subcommittee on this work.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
Okay, I'll go around real quick again. Commissioner Navarro?
When Measure E does come back again to the commission, is there a way you can include some of the previous notes that this commission has had regarding Measure E and any votes that we've taken for historical, I guess, reference for the new commissioners that haven't participated in those Measure E conversations?
Well, all those notes are available online, so they can be recirculated and what's available online.
That's a no.
Yes, what's available online.
I know, but
Yeah.
I'm saying if you could include it, so
I-
so my ask is, can you include that when you bring Measure E back to the table, to the notes, to the commission?
We're happy
If
to
not-
redistribute those
okay,
notes.
If you could
Yeah.
do that, yeah. If not, I guess the audit committee could do that. Thank you.
Vice Chair Partita? No. Okay, I do have one comment. Question, comment. Attachment B, page 33. It's table F. And it's about the units rehabilitated, preserved, and acquired for alternative adequate sites pursuant to government code, section, so forth. In there, you talk about mobile home park preservation. And you've had the unit amounts for rehabilitation activity, preservation of units at risk. And then again, once you have the mobile home park preservation,
Sorry, Chair, where are you referring? We just want to make sure we're seeing what you're saying.
yep, that's
Attachment
attachment
B,
B, page 33.
30, mine only goes to 31.
Well, there you go.
It's the written part.
No.
Table F.
Okay, table F, got it. Thank you.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, so does state that there's mobile home park preservation there. Now, I understand that the city rezoned the mobile homes designation to mobile homes. And that, I don't know, it could be debated whether it actually preserved or not, because there are already layers of preservation and mechanisms in place, such as the closure ordinance. But is there a reason why you don't have the total units in there?
Yes, the directions up above, the preservation rules, what you can count are very strict.
Okay.
And it is about acquiring properties and then restricting them as affordable. And so that first sentence in the directions, it does say, converted from non-affordable to affordable by acquisition and preserved, including park preservation. So there are some structures in which, a nonprofit would buy a park and then income restrict the spaces. And so that's, I think, what's intended to be counted on table F.
Okay.
Yep.
That was it. Thank you so much. Commissioner Moore?
I'm going to be as quick as possible. H7, safe supportive parking. Thank you so much for doing that. A woman whose brother died an alcoholic on the streets, she followed his path and found that was the most affordable way to give dignity and take care of people. So I want to emphasize that. I hope you make it a priority. S5 and S6 code enforcement. I don't know where this fits, but there's not consistency in enforcement. They've gone into 2 buildings, 3 buildings in our neighborhood and required that the owner spend $15,000 replacing the panel when it didn't have to be replaced legally. And then they're saying this building has to do this, but this building doesn't have to. And again, I want to emphasize external is more important than internal, unless internal is really bad. And I've heard some bad stories, but quickly on S20 tenant preferences to help fight displacement. I remember the presentation on it pretty vividly, and I remember the presenter saying the numbers didn't work, so we had to modify what we did. And I think that's because the assumption behind it's incorrect. And I think it should be based more on income. And then, thank you for nodding. I'm going as quickly as possible. I really appreciated that you added the homeless seat and you actually have an alternative and that you put that as a success. I would like you to add a landlord seat or a housing provider seat. We make up a lot of the constituencies in this department and are not represented. So that's it. Thank you. Oh, one quick question, sorry. So Google bought up all this land by Dearden and now they're laying it sit vacant. They said they're not moving here. What's going, and I heard you mentioned something about the Dearden area. What's going on with that?
I don't really have an update on the, whether Downtown West is proceeding or when. I do think Google has expressed interest in continuing forward with that project, but it is a matter of feasibility as to when they would go forward, Eric, or?
No, I mean, that's accurate. I mean, they still have a development agreement to develop that multiple sites throughout that area with affordable and market rate housing and office in the future. We don't, as Kristen says, we don't have any further information, but they do still own those properties and there are approvals through that development agreement there.
So they're sitting vacant. We lost a lot of housing there. Can you comment? I mean, we lost a lot of housing. Can you comment on that? Is there anything you can do to get them to move forward? Any incentives or?
Urban Catalyst is moving forward. That's a project. So there's a couple of projects that will be moving forward
Okay.
to try to rebuild some of the housing there.
Okay.
Mhm.
How soon?
That one will come before council probably in April as part of the Growth Areas Incentive Program.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Thanks, guys.
Commissioner Moed, Commissioner Saperman.
Just a couple quick clarifications. With Google and with other market rate development, I mean, part of the reason why it's not penciling is because commercial and office doesn't pencil, and that's usually what funds all of the housing, especially the affordable housing. And then just in terms of the builder's remedy, I know Commissioner Tran asked if like builder's remedy projects are being built. They are in some cities. The intent of the builder's remedy is for cities that just like aren't making good faith efforts to build housing and gave builders an opportunity to go through typical zoning requirements and be able to build and actually meet the city's needs for housing. Obviously, that's a very different case for San Jose. And the applications in San Jose are unique from what we've seen throughout other cities where they may be, some of the applications aren't as like advantageous as we would have liked to see. What we have seen is that a lot of builders remedy projects across the state have been blocked by cities that don't want to see housing built. So it's kind of like a mixed bag. And I think we'll see a good amount of housing come out of it, at least.
Thank you. Commissioner Beeler? No, Commissioner DeBono? Commissioner Finn?
I just want to state that I don't know who can read any of this, but I can't. I think it is pretty much, most of it is a waste of paper. I mean, can you actually?
No
read
one
it?
can, and apologies for that, Commissioner. We'll make sure that gets corrected next time.
And actually, we've tried in the past to correct it. It's HCD's form and it's not able to be resized or printed differently. And so I actually attended another meeting with another city and it was the same apology from staff on that one as we apologize because nobody can read that.
That's
So the online version may be easier to see because you can blow
If,
it up.
if you look for the Housing Catalyst work plan, it's in a much more digestible format, and then we have it online where you can kind of rank it and look at it. So that's why we kind of did it in that format, because this is what the state kind of gives us. It's a locked spreadsheet, so it doesn't really print out, right?
That
And
permit.
that's what we have to physically, not physically, digitally submit.
Can I
as part of
ask
the
then that
progress
the
report.
next time that we have a packet like this, that you can inform us where to find it online?
Yes.
So that we can actually peruse it before we come to the meeting?
Yes.
And it is the link for this packet that would be sent out every time. The attachment you could zoom into. Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Gabriel?
Yeah, I was gonna compliment how extensive this housing element progress report, and it looks really, really interesting, if I could see it. There was one item there, I think it was like ministerial, is that correct?
Yep.
I don't know what number it is now, because how would I learn some of these terminologies as a newcomer here?
We try in our reports to explain and not use too much jargon. I know sometimes it can be a lot though, but we try, in the narrative of the report to try to reference as much as possible where we're using acronyms or other terminology to try to explain it a little bit better. But I know sometimes it's challenging. So
Oh,
I
no,
don't
no,
know.
I was just looking for
Commissioner
tips.
Gabriel? Oh, sorry. You can always, if you have any questions in advance of the meeting, submit that to myself. And I'd be happy to report that out. And if I can get you answers prior to the meeting, we'll go ahead and deliver that. Otherwise, at least staff will be ready and be able to provide you with those answers.
All right, I'll keep that in mind and do so.
Anything else? Sorry. Nope.
No, thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Tran? Okay. Well, thank you, Kristen. Thank you, Jared. Really
My
appreciate
pleasure.
it.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. Nice to see you all.
Yeah, great to
Thanks
see
for
you
your
too.
interest.
Awesome.
Good to see you
Yeah.
guys.
Okay, so we move into the last open forum of the evening. This allows the member of the public to speak on 2 minutes and any of the items that are not on the agenda, but still under the purview. Yep. Feel free to come on up.
Yeah, I was just informed that if you're online, you can't call in and ask a question. There's still the raise the hand thing there, so it gives the impression that you can do that. You guys might want to look into that. The other thing is that if there are fewer people here, 2 minutes just doesn't seem like enough time. If there were a crowd here, I can understand. But limiting people that, especially people that have been left out of the conversation as a result of online shenanigans. I can't think of what word to describe it. As I mentioned, this is going to become a battle of mine to try to get that thing resolved, because it presents itself as if this is a meeting for everybody inclusive by being online. But if you can't comment, it's not inclusive, it's exclusive. And I think that should be addressed. This is not a contentious group here. I don't think we have people that are storming the walls, trying to get in, chaining themselves to chairs, things like that. So, this is a pretty simple meeting. Also, there's no way to type in a question or make a comment. You can't even do that. There's no chat that's available. There's also no link that shows you where the agenda is so that somebody at home might want to peruse that. I think you could, before the meeting starts, even if you had it up on the screen where people would have a link that they could click on, and then they could get that agenda and be able to read that while the meeting is being conducted, and they would have an opportunity to be able to take notes and ask questions, except you can't do that online. So I don't know. I have been a person that's been quite active in civic responsibility. And I think if you want to encourage the public, you need to be more open about it. I was even offered a seat here, but I refused it because I felt I was not really being truly treated as a commenter, but rather as a token. And that's the last thing I want to do, is have somebody use me to just check off a box saying, yeah, we talked to these people. We know what's going on.
Understood. Thank you so much for your comments and your suggestions. Appreciate it. Anyone else? Yeah, Commissioner Finn?
Yeah, actually, on that note, Eric, last Thursday, you did a online Zoom meeting and people were allowed to chat in that meeting. Can we start doing that with our meeting?
No, because that was not an official city meeting. That was a department communication meeting that we're going to have on a monthly basis as part of our community engagement process. So it's separate and apart from the formalized meetings of city council to which this body is an advisory to. So you're subject to different rules than a department community meeting.
Okay, that being said, the reason why we aren't allowing people to speak in Zoom meetings is because of some of the language that occurred during those meetings, particularly at a council meeting. We've had issues here, but we've dealt with them. With the chat, you don't have that same possibility because people have to put their questions forward. We have that already. People can email in questions. So why can't they ask questions in a chat mode? And can you bring that to the council and ask them if we can start having that ability? Because just like this gentleman brought up, we're excluding the vast majority of public because they can't get down here to these meetings and they can't participate anymore. Now, I have to say, when we used to allow them to, our meetings went till 10, sometimes even 11 o'clock at night, and it was very inconvenient to listen to all those people. But they brought a lot of information to the table that this commission needed to hear. And I'm going to keep harping on this every chance I get, because we need to have that available to us. Otherwise, we have no clue what the public wants from this commission. Because nobody's emailing in. Are you getting any emails in, Mindy?
Once in a while, but not often.
Yeah. I think if we were allowed to be able to do a chat, I think that would solve the problem that the council has with people making disparaging remarks, because the remarks wouldn't be made. Just
Thank
like
you.
in-
Thank you, Commissioner Finn. Anybody else want to speak? No. Commissioner Beeler?
I'm just wondering if, to Commissioner Finn's point, can we not make a motion that we would entertain questions from Zoom, like one per participant or anything? Why
I think
can't
it's
we?
subject to council rules. This is council's rules.
Okay,
And
so
all
we can make an
subcommittees are
ad hoc
subject to it.
committee, but we can't accept questions from the public.
I'm sorry?
So we can make an ad hoc committee here, but we can't accept questions
Correct,
from the
because
public.
that's council's rules for how they establish committees through the city clerk's office, which is why Commissioner Finn, I hear your complaints and my response is always the same. These are city council's rules. If you can go to city council, get them amended, no objections from us, but these are city council's rules and we're subject to city's council's rules.
Yeah,
I think it's important to note, we don't really interact with the public, right? Same with city council. When you're at those meetings, the public can come make a comment and that's fine, but there's no engagement with the public.
Mhm.
So, asking, them to present questions, unless you're going to utilize it, and ask the question yourself, then it doesn't necessarily apply in this case.
Well, I just thought that if they were listening and they had questions with the content coming through, that they should be able to get clarification because they are community members. And I think it's unfair that they're sitting there and participating and not allowed to participate. That seems counterproductive. So, but I know that this isn't your guys' fault, but I just want to get on record to say that I think that's exclusionary and that's against our city's motto. So.
Commissioner Saperman.
I just wanted to let folks know that I will be reaching out to the mayor's office and requesting that maybe some rules are changed, that public comment can return and just get a status report update on that.
Thank you.
Thank you for requesting it. We set up an ad hoc committee to get it back. Comments on Zoom. I don't know what happened with it, but I think we all want it.
We sent a letter and the council stayed firm in their position. That's their position. Yep. So. Yeah, okay. Okay, sorry, Vice Chair Partita.
I totally agree we should bring comments back, but I think one of the reasons why we disabled the comment chat during the pandemic was because people were nasty during our comments. And at the time we all had our laptops, we would get very distracted with everything going on in the chat, and then we wouldn't be able to dialogue. I know that's not the case now, but just so you know, that did happen. That's why the chat got disabled.
Not really. It
Okay,
got
well, let's just keep moving, please. It's a continued comment. Good. Commissioner Navarro?
Yeah, I just, I'm hoping, we could see exactly what the rule says, right? Because technically we could set up comments be emailed to a staffer, and then the staffer could read them out, and technically maybe that is a go around of the rules, but there's got to be a way where at least we could hear the public's comment, even if we don't have to see it in the chat window or they have to necessarily speak, but whether there's a way, and if the housing department's open to set up a generic email box where questions could be sent, and the ones that are.
So
I don't
to
know.
respond to your comment, there is a general email box that the housing department has. Everyone is free to provide questions and comments. And again, this is not a rule of the housing department. This is a rule of city council.
And I will add that on the agenda, the public can send me comments by 12 p.m. of the meeting date. And if they do have comments, then I send out an email to you all, plus a physical copy, and then it's on our website as well. So there's that.
You got, it's something to remember. Pre-pandemic, everybody would show up and, I get we have the technology and that provides opportunity. But it's not like the council has literally crimped everything down. This is just reverting back to what it was pre-2020. So, I mean, again, we've all submitted our comments to the council. I know we've all continued to do that. I think that's great. But it's not necessarily exclusionary. Everybody still has the opportunity to come here. Everyone still has the opportunity to email, right? So, Commissioner Del Bono?
I would like to contribute to the pizza.
No.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Don't worry about it, Commissioner Del Bono.
So here's
Yeah.
$20.
Well, I saw the email this morning. Well, let's adjourn the meeting so that no one has to hear about pizza talk. And everyone can go on their way. But, okay, so that concludes open forum. The next meeting is scheduled for Thursday, April 10th at 5:45 in wing rooms 118, 120 here at City Hall. Tentatively, we are expecting to review over the rent stabilization program budget and fee recommendation, Measure E spending plan, housing trust fund budget, and housing balance status report. So it's going to be a busy night. Be prepared. Make sure you bring food. And with that, we will adjourn the meeting of March 13th at 8:28. Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks for the pizza, Ryan.
Yeah, you're